how this 3.8 billion rand will be allocated so that we do not stop functioning as a post office by the end of this month, which is a huge possibility.
Health unions in KwaZulu-Natal say they are not satisfied by the measures announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa during the State of the Nation address regarding measures to bring healthcare to all South Africans. During last night's SONA, President Ramaphosa emphasized that once fully implemented, the NHI will save many lives. However, the Public Servants Association and the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union both say the healthcare system as it stands in KZN has collapsed. PSA Provincial Manager Mlungisi Ndlovu raises the issue of staff shortages at state hospitals and clinics.
We are very disappointed as PSA because you have heard in the past week that doctors, unemployed doctors were on the street. There are no doctors in hospital as we speak. There are no pharmacies in hospital as we speak. The infrastructure is in the bad condition. You can go to Prince Mshie and they are still using asbestos. So as PSA in the province, we are saying the president has given this State of the Nation address, but things are very bad in our province.
A court battle is set to ensue after 3 of the Afrikaans e-hailing service, Wanatu's vehicles, were impounded by the Tshwane's Metro Police Department for allegedly operating without permits. Wanatu has temporarily suspended its operations. Build One SA's Ayanda Ali has come under fire for her post on X asking whether Wanatu had operating permits from the municipality. Ali, who is also a member of Gauteng Provincial Legislature, says this has got nothing to do with race as it is mostly insinuated.
If Wanatu was a Xhosa speaking or Zulu speaking or English speaking only, if they don't have permits and they're on the road, we take exception to that when our drivers are being punished and hammered day in, day out for not having permits. So the Afrikaans issue will be ventilated in the courts when it comes to human rights violations and issues. We have an interest in that. We definitely want to know the outcome. I have my personal views, but on this matter, it's about permits and impounding vehicles and doing so in a discriminatory matter where it was only targeting our black drivers from Bolt, InDrive and Uber, and it was leaving Wanatu. Now that everybody's being impounded, let us look at the legalities of the impounding.
Leaders of several nationalist European parties are due together in Madrid under the slogan Make Europe Great Again in a meeting convened by the Patriots for Europe group. Its priorities are similar to those of U.S. President Donald Trump, including tougher immigration controls and rolling back on green policies. The BBC's Guy Hedgecoe has the details.
We're expecting some of the major figures of the far right to be in Madrid today and tomorrow. Marine Le Pen of the French National Rally, and also Geert Wilders of the PVV in the Netherlands, Matteo Salvini of the Italian Liga, and of course the Spanish leader of Vox, Santiago Abascal, who's hosting the event. Those are some of the figures who will be here, along with Viktor Orban, of course, of Hungary. And they're due to meet tonight for a dinner, and then tomorrow is really the big day for them. There's a rally in a hotel here in Madrid.
Recapping the top story, SASSA and the Post Bank are appealing to social grant beneficiaries to replace their SASSA Gold cards with the new Post Bank Black cards by the end of this month. I am Ondilambana for SFM News headlines at 3:30.
And coming up in your sports this hour, the Proteas announced 2 big additions for their Tri-Series. Zwane ready to reclaim his position in Sundowns, and Spark Proteas aim to finish strong at Vitality Nations Cup. More details at 3:30.
We definitely know what good insurance is. Our insurance don't delay when it comes to any claims. If something happens to one of our vehicles on the road, service delivery is the main thing.
They make sure that you are a satisfied customer from the beginning to the end.
It's definitely a win-win with our insurance.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
The Mangaung Metro Municipality is hosting an investment summit to bring investment to Bloemfontein. The summit will take place on 19 and 20 February at the City Hall and aims to bring together different economic role players from across the country and abroad. To be part of the summit or for more info, call 073 184 8972 or send an email to summit@mangaung.co.za. Mangaung, at the heart of it all.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course, We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It has been one crazy week, hasn't it? But it's Friday, and the news cycle turns as per always. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the National Pulse. You're not just listening in, you can engage me, so I'd love to get your thoughts. If I asked you, let's get talking about the biggest issues of the day or the week, what would they be, I wonder? This on the back of Sona last night, right? Now to call in, 086 000 2032, please save that number and maybe share it with somebody else who hasn't yet called in for the very first time. You can also WhatsApp, and you can do that in two ways, text or voice note, 0614 104 107, right? And don't forget social media, particularly on the X platform, on Elon Musk's Twitter. You can tweet, right? Use the hashtag The National Pulse and then tag SFM Radio and certainly tag me, Ashraf Garda. Add your comments as well, so we'll certainly look at it, and when I can, I'll read them out. Otherwise, I'll share some of them when the opportunity comes up. Right, so let's get talking. What should we talk about? Lots to cover, absolutely. By the way, Tony Leon is my guest after 5. You know, every Friday we have this fireside chat. So today it's Tony Leon. I wonder what I should be asking him, or what should we be talking about, because that's the nature of the fireside chat. We'll be talking. Of course, we have different reactions, different angles around last night's State of the Nation address by the President. But let's get to, I think, one of the most significant issues of the week. The issue of whatever Donald Trump may have said about South Africa, and the responses from many others, and how people have put, rightly or wrongfully, AfriForum at the very center of all of that, and what that means, not just in terms of land, but certainly land when it comes to tilling the land. So therefore, I think the issue of Agri-SA and their thoughts are particularly important. Now, Agri-SA is the latest organization to denounce the disinformation regarding South Africa's new Expropriation Act, okay? Well, let's find out what exactly is their position with it. Johan Kotze is with me, Agri-SA's CEO. Johan, first of all, appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Yeah, thank you also for the call. Much appreciated also from our side.
Thank you. Right now, lots has been said regarding expropriation, and I think where you said it's particularly important what your position is. Now, I'm going to quote you, and it will get you to talk more about it. You're saying, to be clear, no seizures or confiscation, no land seizures or confiscation of private property has taken place, nor has any land been expropriated without compensation. There's a lot more you say. Why did you feel it was important for you to state that position?
I think the most important reason for us to stand up and talk about this is because of the political turmoil that happened after this, and then also the unnecessary tension that we have. For us as farmers, we just want to farm. Mm-hmm. When you deal with misinformation like this, and it's directly, focused on us as agriculturalists, the first thing that happens is we kind of lose confidence. And the second thing is investors' confidence is lost all over the world. That's what you've seen. So the take is for us as farmers, capital formation, access to capital, economic growth, job that we kind of work and live for is at stake here. So that's why I think the main reason for standing up is not to fight, it's not to counter, but just to say, wait, you can't just make baseless statements which is irresponsible. You need to put substance to what you just said, because it's not true. We've witnessed no seizure of confiscation of private property and no expropriation without compensation. So you cannot say that. And to stir and to bring that into the political sphere to have an outcome, detrimental to us as farmers in South Africa. And
Now-
I think the reason why we stood up is to say no.
Well, it's
no,
interesting-
It's not to fight. It's just to put on the lights to say no. No,
Okay.
this is not it.
Interesting
If
you
have
say
a
so.
Political agenda,
Yeah.
that's good, but don't drive it through the factual status of agriculture, because it puts a lot of pressure on us as agriculture, and it puts actually the spotlight on the negative side and the negative way of agriculture, which is not to the benefit of food security, is not to the benefit of the well-being of South Africans in South Africa.
Well, interesting you say so, because for many people, I think AfriForum specifically and Solidarity in terms of their mission very much caters for, Afrikaans speaking or Afrikaners per se, right? Now, clearly Agri-SA doesn't do that, but we also must accept the fact that many of the farmers in the country would also fall into that same category of Afrikaans speaking people anyway. So there could well be that overlap between the groups. Did you find, therefore, that obviously, therefore, the statements of AfriForum, and even now, Kali Kriel is once again confirming, even last night, to say President Ramaphosa's offside in terms of his position. Therefore, your organization as Agri-SA and AfriForum are effectively at loggerheads with each other. You're poles apart, right?
So I think the first thing we need to say is, if you talk about agriculture in South Africa, or Agri-SA, it's a representation of farmers in South Africa. And to say that commercial farmers are white and Afrikaans speaking, it's a statement that's also not true. It might be that we have a majority of farmers being white, but I can tell you there's a lot of farmers being black, being Zulu speaking, Tswana speaking, Afrikaans speaking, and this misinformation is actually is put in a light where you put a lot of political tension into a industry, which is not necessary.
Okay, well, it's a good point. It's a good point you make. Now, of course, it's not your place to fight the political battle, as you've mentioned, right? But let's talk about economics. You're saying already that what has happened in this week, right? Whatever may have happened to AfriForum and Solidarity before in terms of their lobbying, and I'm looking at people like Drickus, who's fighting a fight on Sunday, and again effectively amplifying the same issues, right? That is having an impact in terms of investment. Explain how it's having this impact. Share with us what has happened.
So if you want to buy a car, and somebody with a car like this made a negative comment, what do? You hesitate. You pull back. That's exactly what happened. And we felt, you can say whatever you want to, but put the facts down. And all we did was we pushed that into that space. Remember, access to capital for agriculture comes through a system where private property rights play a major role in creating wealth, and from that you create the possibility or the access to finance. The moment, but there's also a lot of unlending from international investors into, say, for instance, the banking system or the financing system in South Africa. The moment that you create this and you put this on the foreground, there's a lot of mistrust in that system. What do? You raise the risk. The moment you raise risk, you put this under a kind of a risky enterprise environment. What do you think happened to us as farmers? So that's the one side. I think the most important side for me is the moment that you create something negative, the farmers themselves start to hesitate. They go in limbo mode. That's the last thing we need in South Africa.
And has that happened, Johan? Anecdotally, are you aware of that on both sides, local farmers, but also in terms of potential foreign dealings with South Africa in the agricultural space? Anecdotally, has that happened in the last few days already?
Yeah, I've attended quite a large meeting yesterday with agricultural leaders, and what got to me while sitting there is they asked questions because of the misinformation, and that's why we brought out this statement. But what I can say to you, after leaving that meeting, I felt more meaning in being a farmer than I felt before I went to the meeting. Because at that meeting we said to ourselves, yes, we know there's some obstacles. Yes, we know there's a possibility, and we also have a concern of the definition of expropriation. We know that. We know that there's always a possibility of misinterpreting, say, for instance, the new bill. But, however, we still have a belief system. We still believe that the Constitution is well enough to cover it. We still believe in justice. We still believe in fairness. And for that reason, and we had a look at what is the greatest need in South Africa and the play and the role play of agriculture. And for that, we stood up and said, we choose not to be negative. We choose not to criticize. We choose to be part of rebuilding South Africa. You bring me a country in the world where you have 9 different political views in one room to create one government of national unity. It's a wonder.
That's very true. That's remarkable in its own right, isn't it? Johanni, I'm going to move on very quickly to what then is Agri-SA's position regarding expropriation?
So expropriation is needed. It's a tool that's used all over the world. And we understand that. And we understand that the tool is, you're always going to have a position where you have public interest. And you have then the property right owners. And there's always going to be conflict. But that's why you have a constitution, you have a law. And you need to be able to utilize that in a just and equitable way. And we were always for that. What we did say is, don't misuse the law. And because it's not well defined, we were worried about that and concerned. And we said that. That's why we asked the President to take it back to the Constitutional Court to make sure that it's still intact with that. Because you can do it now, and if something happens and the intent is misused, you're going to battle in future to rectify that intent again. So
I take it you've been part of, and to confirm, Agri-SA has been part of the grouping, first with NADLAC and with us in terms of actually crafting your response around building this idea of what would be expropriation, isn't it?
So the first thing I want to say is, even though we might differ, we never walked away. We never walked away because we said we need to have a better South Africa. And we all need to sit together and get to a point where you say, sometimes I need to give in to a certain extent. And other times we need to stand up and say, hey, can we just move on, because this is putting a lot of pressure on us. And I think the first thing is the fact that we participated is the first mark you can give us to say, but we never ran away from a difficult situation. The fact that we said we are concerned, it's still standing. We are concerned. The implementation of the law was never tested. It's new. But we still believe the Constitution will back us up.
Johan, yes, a final thought. Speaking to me is fabulous, but I think you speak to many people who completely are aligned to what you're saying. The big issue right now is what the global world is thinking about. You're starting with the USA because of the impact of their pronouncements. What is your plan to take this message, and you don't have to be physically there, but to ensure that the message is broadcast and heard amongst key decision makers and thought leaders around the world, starting with the USA?
Yeah, I think we're small players. So I feel humbled just to have a show with you. It's not our nature. We just want to farm. But what I do believe is that through social media, through what the media does, and through what's happening here, some leaders would see the heart of a farmer in South Africa. A heart of a farmer where we say we want to reconcile. And we are reconciled in many cases. We have problems, but we have this inside to say, but we have a government of national unity. Can we work together?
Okay.
Can we do it differently? So the take is.
Okay. Johan, you spoke very quickly. Our time's up here. Quickly.
I hope they see our hearts, that we're here for a better South Africa, and I think it's going to work.
All right. Just last thing, we got 10 seconds. I know you said you're small players. I'm just going to suggest that, in fact, you may be a small player in your eyes, but I think the impact of what you may have is so critical that it has to be heard in the capitals of the world. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's a plan that you need to devise ASAP. Think about that. Johan Kotze, thanks for your time. The CEO of Agri-SA. Do you agree it needs to be heard around the capitals of the world?
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
Insurance are experts in what they do.
They get to understand what type of business are you doing so that they can insure you properly.
it actually validates why we're with them. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, what are you waiting for?
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, what about your thoughts? Any opinions, anything you want to say regarding that conversation we just had? And should Agri-SA take this message that they've made very clear, which is to be clear, there are no land seizures or confiscation of private property that has taken place, nor has any land been expropriated without compensation. That's the official position of Agri-SA. Should they take this message to the world because it's that important? Or not? I'd like to get your opinion. Talking about the world, let's talk about what's happening in East Africa to a large degree, and the goings on regarding the importance of what's happened with regard to the DRC and Rwanda. Now, the Southern African Development Community (SADC) and the East Africa Community, which is the EAC, well, they're meeting today and tomorrow in Tanzania to discuss the ongoing conflict in the eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So what does this mean? And hopefully, are we in a situation where we're in a better position now, 1 week later, than we were last week? Let's get the opinion and thoughts of Gabriel Zakaria, who's a journalist based in Tanzania. Gabriel, appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Thank you as well, and it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, maybe let's start with this. What is the position? Now, last week, at the beginning of the week, we were speaking about people dying, amongst them South Africans, but not just that. Then we know about hundreds of people being displaced and maybe others dying, and different, countries, leaders effectively accusing each other of lying. Where are we now regarding the problems in that region?
Well, as you said, this problem has been now going on to the Democratic Republic of Congo, whereby civilians have been killed, and the M23 are the one that have been being accused by the government of DRC that Rwanda is behind of what is going on. So, as we are speaking now, and as you said in your introduction, we are expecting these leaders to meet together in Dar es Salaam tomorrow. If things will not change, as it has been issued earlier, that both leaders from Rwanda, the Paul Kagame, president of Rwanda, together with the president of DRC, they will all together meet eye by eye in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So we know so far that the leaders are from East Africa as well as from SADC, they are meeting. They will be meeting tomorrow in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and we don't have any information so far if there is any leader or any head of the state who has postponed or who has explained on his concern of not to participate in this meeting.
What do you think is going to happen at this meeting? I mean, so from a representation point of view, you mentioned Kagame, I hear that part, and other representative leaders, but South Africa is now very central to this as well. I mean, any confirmation whether South Africa's president will be there as well? And I say that because of the to and fro between himself and Kagame?
So far, we expect also the South African president will be there because there is no any information that has been informed so far or about any president who will not participate in this meeting, either from South Africa, from SADC or from East African community. So what we are expecting and what the public expecting is just to see these leaders when they get to meet. And if their meeting is going to be the solution or the end up of the conflict that is undergoing in the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially on the west, in east of Congo. So that is what is being waited to see if at all this meeting will bring the fruits that is expected from the public.
And based upon what you know, do you get any sense that that this meeting would bring the parties together, or it will just be an argument at a meeting, talk shop, and then that's it?
Due to my journalistic investigation, what we think is these leaders, they will all meet together there. Paul Kagame and the President Tshisekedi from DRC, they will be meeting in Dar es Salaam. And they are the one who have chosen to meet in Dar es Salaam. Before issuing the report or before issuing the statement that these heads of state will be meeting in Dar es Salaam, we heard that everyone who has been asked by the chairperson of East Africa, where would you prefer the meeting to be? Each of them, President Kagame said, okay, I prefer the meeting to be done in Tanzania. And when his counterpart, Tshisekedi, asked the same question, he also preferred that, okay, it will be much better if the meeting will be held in Tanzania. So both of them have agreed. We know so far that both of them have agreed to meet in Dar es Salaam. And this, why have they agreed to meet in Dar es Salaam, or why did they choose to meet in Dar es Salaam? This is because Tanzania has not taken any side so far regarding what is going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Tanzania has always been neutral. So I think that could be one among the factors that has given these leaders the trust that Tanzania could just mediate what is going on between the two countries.
And finally, Gabriel, one thing is to have a ceasefire, which is just temporary. What you want is a lasting peace, right? But for that to happen, you have to remove the biggest impediment to that lasting peace. What do you think at this point in time that would be?
Well, different opinions have been issued, and even political analysts have also issued their concerns that it is not going to be easy, of course, to to settle down these problems that is existing or that is happening between the two countries. Because remember, this is very historical. It is a crisis that has not been started yesterday. It has existed. It has been there for years and years. So really, perhaps it will help to cool or to calm down the situation, but it's not expected to be the last solution between these countries or the last solution to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Okay, well, you've certainly given us lots to consider and reflect on as we get into the weekend, and hopefully it will be a good weekend for all of us. Gabriel Zakaria was a journalist based in Tanzania, and this in relation to the meeting of all these leaders, important stakeholders regarding the problems in the eastern DRC region. Appreciate your time. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30 years on Della.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence wants to engage the presidency on the extension of the deployment of the SANDF to the DRC. The Communications Workers Union has warned that there is a huge possibility the South African Post Office may cease functioning at the end of this month, and the U.S. Deputy Special Envoy to the Middle East has said the presence of Hezbollah in Lebanon's proposed government crosses a red line. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's been a very busy day in Durban with some heavy rains and a lot of crashes. A big one on the M19 has closed the road from Mountbatten, Reservoir Hills, going out to Claremont, New Germany. The M19 is closed at that Mountbatten Drive off-ramp due to a truck crashing and losing a load of what appears to be wooden logs all over the highway. Quite a backlog into that closure, heading back to Springfield on Umgeda Road. If you're coming into Durban, there's also a bit of pressure along that M19 eastbound in that Westville area as well. as well. Breakdown at Spaghetti Junction N2 South is heavy, and breakdowns northbound around Sabaya, so that's quite heavy, and another breakdown before Gateway coming from Sabaya, so some heavy traffic there, and the usual sort of backlog at Cliffdale as you begin to climb up from the Key Ridge area. Jetbird crash on the N3 South at Van Buren, that's causing chaos through Galulis this afternoon on your way to Germiston, and Cape Town a crash on the N2 out of town before Baden-Powell Drive. That's a queue right back to the airport runway and a bit of onlooking on the inbound. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Chumi, you've got your eyes on cricket.
I do. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, the Proteas have added Lungingidi and Bryce Shamsi to the squad ahead of their ODI Tri-Series opener against New Zealand on Monday. They were recently hit with the massive blow of star pacer Gerald Coetzee, ruled out due to injury, and in preparation for the ICC Champions Trophy, the Proteas have travelled to Pakistan to play against both Pakistan and New Zealand. Now, the Champions Trophy is scheduled to start on the 19th of February, and South Africa will start its campaign against Afghanistan on the 21st of February at the National Stadium in Karachi. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns midfielder Themba Zwane says that he's determined to fight for his place in Coach Miguel Cardoso's squad. Zwane recently returned to light training after suffering a partial Achilles tendon tear last year, and he says that his injury setback does not deter him because he has the mental fortitude and faith to overcome any challenge.
It was difficult at first, but obviously with the support of my team, my family, I had to push myself, and I'm happy now at the moment. I'm running outside, I don't feel any pain. It's just that it's tight at the moment, but overall I think so far so good.
Meanwhile, the South African Under-17 national team is poised to compete in the 2025 CAF Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations. They will represent Southern Africa alongside Zambia and Angola, the finalists from the 2024 COSAFA tournament. And this opportunity came up after the Confederation of African Football expanded the number of participating nations from 12 to 16. Although Amajimbos narrowly missed out on qualifying for the previous tournament due to semi-final loss to Zambia, they secured this spot as the third best team. Elsewhere, some good news for Manchester City with midfielder Rodri, who has been included in the club's Champions League squad for the next stage of the competition. They play Real Madrid over 2 legs in the playoff round, and Rodri has not played since tearing his ACL in a 2-2 draw with Arsenal in September, and at that time he was ruled out for the rest of the season, but now seems like he will be back and might just play in one of or two of those legs in those playoff round. He actually grew up in Real Madrid and played for Atletico Madrid, so he'll definitely be looking to play for City. In tennis, second seed Casper Ruud beat American qualifier Michael Moore, who was competing in his first tour level event since last April. He claimed a 6-1, 6-4 victory in 70 minutes, and Ruud is currently aiming for his second hardcourt trophy and first since 2021 in San Diego. In golf, PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan says that he met with President Donald Trump at the White House this week as the tour moves closer to finalizing a long-sought investment deal with the Saudi Arabian backers of the rival Live Golf. Now, Monahan says that he met with Trump and asked him to get involved in the negotiations for the good of the game and the good of the country and for all the countries involved. In netball, South Africa President Cecilia Molokwane says that she expects the Spar Proteas to maintain their winning run when they face Malawi tomorrow at Copper Box Arena in London. South Africa secured 2 straight wins over Uganda and hosts England to qualify for the finals. However, they still have to face Malawi before the tournament decider.
The senior team right now, they're enjoying their vitality for Nations Cup. And as you've seen, we won Uganda convincingly so. We have also won England with 2 goals. What a disappointment for the hosts. And we are going to play Malawi on Saturday, and I'm hoping for another win. obviously we've gone to the finals already because we've beaten 2 teams already, so we've gone into the finals already. To me, it's let's wait for Sunday when we play. I don't know whoever will be playing, but somebody will have to play us on Sunday.
Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side. Ashraf, I'm looking forward to seeing Themba Zwane back on the field. I know it's not going to be easy for him, obviously, to be back in the squad because there's a number of midfielders in Mamelodi Sundowns' side.
You need to get into the team in the first place.
But I do know that he's a fighter and, looking forward to that.
And that's the one. And, of course, back home tomorrow is also the cricket finals, right? The SA20 final. We'll talk about that later on. Lots more to look forward to as we talk sport here on the National Pulse.
The National School Nutrition Program and social grants are instrumental in ensuring that children's needs for food and other essential services are met. We need a minimum health promotion levy of 20% on all sugary drinks to support social protection initiatives. Find out more on the next episode of Chew on This at heala.org, HEALA.org, on 30 January from 3 p.m.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
V-up your 2025 with Vodacom Business and Galaxy AI. Save up to 20,000 Rand with trade-in when you pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra 256 gig on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for just 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal with the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM for 69 Rand extra per month. Available in-store and online. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Of course, I'm going to get your comments, and of course, people are commenting already, which I can absolutely understand, right? Amongst them, Tommy saying in East London, Ashraf, I think Agri-SA should not be entertained at all because they are the ones who went to Trump with the wrong information. Are you sure you're talking about the right people, Tommy? They went to Trump with the wrong information, and they should go to the world and tell the truth the same way they did when they spread lies about South Africa. Okay, Tommy, you're completely offside. I think you need to listen to that conversation. Listen to the podcast. It's available, safm.co, and we'll probably tweet it out as well. You are mixing up Agri-SA with AfriForum completely, okay? Right, let's move on to another important issue which we clearly can't get mixed up on, is the SONA reaction. We had the State of the Nation address last night. Lots of preview going on what's going to happen, who's going to say what would the president say and not say, and what would he be wearing. So let's talk about some of the key issues that may have come out of it, right? I mean, we can't talk about 100 things, but some important issues. With me is Dr. Rekhotsol Fetse-Chikane, who's a lecturer at Wits School of Governance and author of a book that I read many years ago, as you would know, Breaking a Rainbow, Building a Nation, the Politics Behind the Fees Must Fall movement. I could say Dr. Chikane now, very differently compared to before. I would say when I last met you a long time ago, Rekhotsol Fetse. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you. Right, now look, clearly we don't have a lot of time to talk about many things, so perhaps what I'll do is I indulge you to say what for you are maybe, say, maximum 4 takeouts that you'd like to share with us that came out of SONA. And maybe we can start with number 1 and then go down to 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, perfect. So for this conversation, I mean, I'm wearing my hat as the deputy chairperson of Defend Our Democracy. And from a more civil society perspective, I think the 3 major things that really stood out was the president's commitment to the ongoing efforts of dealing with state capture in particular. It wasn't a big piece of his address, but it still had relevance in his discussions. The other aspect was around youth unemployment and the economic stimulus into the country. So the president mentioned multiple different things, from the Transformation Fund, the Innovation Fund, as well as the infrastructure fund in particular. And all of these are packaged as the means of the presidency in particular and the executive to really try and kickstart the economy, to really take advantage of increasing business confidence. But the question then becomes, when these promises are made, how do we hold the executive accountable? How do we make sure that they adhere to what they're saying? And then the last aspect of it, and I think this is quite important from the speech, is this reassurance of South Africa's position as trying to be the moral compass on a global geopolitical level. And the president really stood out, mentioning this at the beginning of his speech. Usually foreign affairs are not at the forefront of a SONA address, but it was something that he clearly wanted to emphasize. And all of these bode well, and I think it was an interesting address. I think it was a balanced address, but it also begs many other questions of, we hear the SONA address every single year, and you have a raft of civil society that came out today that said, while good, promises we've heard before haven't actually been done. And we want to be able to say, President, please come to us and tell us, what have you done over the past year to address the things that you brought up the previous year?
Well, I'll talk about the promises in a moment. Let's then maybe just touch on this point, right? Which is, this is the very first ever GNU SONA, right? Did that come across to you as a GNU SONA or a SONA of, and I need I say it, of the African National Congress?
Yeah, so that you could see there were very big differences if you knew what you were looking for from the address. So you could see the president highlighted one particular issue as a means of essentially giving the DA a major win and a well-deserved win. So the president's emphasis on the improvements of the Department of Home Affairs in particular, the improvements when it comes to getting rid of the backlog and the initiatives to create an e-visa system. These are things that had been on the back burner of the Department of Home Affairs, slowly chugging along. But with the new minister who came in, it was really fast-tracked. More new efficient processes were put into place. Now, in the past, it would have been inconceivable to really give an opposition party a win in your SONA address, right? So we can see that there's a balance here. However, it does pose other questions about how does the GNU function in this situation, especially in consideration of what happened with the NHI agreement last week between the ANC and the DA, about can deals be made outside of legislative structures and just between two parties? Some of the parties mentioned that they only heard the final speech in the morning of the SONA, right? So that begs questions of when do you get involved in that process outside of just a cabinet lekgotla? And all of these are governance teething pains of a coalition. So it's not something South Africans should deeply be worried about, but something we should keep an eye on going forward.
Okay, let's then get back to the issue of the promises. I mean, so not just because it's President Ramaphosa, it could have been any president in the past, right? And even the presidents or the prime ministers, I think, in apartheid South Africa, right? When they have these, openings of National Assembly or State of the Nation addresses, are they not always just that, promises?
Yeah, so an organization that Defend Our Democracy has worked with in the past and collaborates with on certain occasions is Youth Capital. And they made a really interesting comment yesterday about the commitments to job creation in South Africa. And South African politics uses an interesting term called job opportunities. And yesterday the president mentioned that we hope to create 2 million job opportunities through different initiatives and 25,000 job opportunities with a particular intervention that he mentioned. Now, if these are very similar promises that he made in previous State of the Nation addresses. Now, if you had achieved that promise in the last two, we would have knocked unemployment amongst young people by 5% over the last 2 years, right, overnight. But the question is, well, it hasn't shifted. And that becomes the importance of it not becoming too enamored by the idea of promises, but really focusing down. Another example is equal education. And equal education's work on essentially saying, President, you had promised that every single school in the country will have access to internet. What we've now found out 2 years later after making that promise, only 18 of these schools have really come or part of a pilot project that government released. Right? So you can see you're not hitting your targets, and that's the importance. If you don't have a firm opposition highlighting these things, civil society becomes a really important tool for the public to utilize to essentially say, how do we make sure that these promises that are being made, these initiatives, these projects are actually being done so that the following year we can ask the right questions, especially in the context of a GNU, that it's not beholden to just one party's agenda, but you can leverage the other parties to ask them, you're part of this government, what have you done to to fulfill the promises that were made by your state.
And therefore, I know I'm going slightly off at a tangent here, but perhaps, you know, there's been this call to say almost that the State of the Nation address almost needs to be a report card from everybody, not just from the president. It's almost like, you know, if let's say there are 10 parties of significance in Parliament, that everyone has to give a report card of how they see different things. It can be tedious, but I'd be fascinated listening to that type of conversation, because we're not getting that, are we?
Yeah, I think, I believe if we made it a report card as well as the wish list, we would have a speech that lasts 3 to 4 hours long.
True.
And it might be the need to think about SONA being what we want to do, and then having a similar event akin to SONA with the same type of gravitas, with the same type of fanfare, that then comes back to the public to say, this is what we've done over the years since I made this promise. Right? Purely for a time sense. And I think that would create a better sense of progress. Often South Africans get lost that even when we make progress, because the government doesn't report back on its progress, we don't see the changes. Right? We can't celebrate the government when it needs to be celebrated, and a lot of the times they really do need to be.
Because I think with progress, people want to see the data, isn't it? The data matters.
Exactly.
They want to, as opposed to the words. But okay, we need to stick with the words now. Let's youth employment. By the way, we'll talk to the team from Youth Capital, I think about 4:45, by the way. So that's important, right? State capture that you brought up is point one. You said it was maybe a small note, but it was just telling that it was repeated and emphasized once again. Anything more you want to say on that?
Yeah, so there was two things. So the president had mentioned that he's made quite a lot of headway, or the state has made quite a lot of headway with dealing with the recommendations from the Zondo Commission. But in actuality, that's not necessarily the case. And another good source to look at would be Open Secrets, which has a live dashboard tracking whether the state has met up with every single recommendation from the Zondo Commission in particular. So we can see that progress. When you look at that dashboard, we're not really there just as yet. The other aspect was the president had mentioned, it was a sleight of hand, if you were paying attention. He had mentioned that he's going to be creating a new SOE reform unit in particular. Now, this becomes quite interesting about the importance of SOEs. Now, we have an SOE bill that is currently under contestation, and it seems to me that the president is not waiting for that to be dealt with just as yet, as a way of dealing with governance and SOEs, financial irregularities, and is trying to create this reform unit to sort that out. Now, we know as DOD that SOEs were rife for state capture in the past, and it's something that I believe the president mentioning is a good step moving forward until the bill is put into place, in a bill that everyone can agree upon, which I don't think will happen anytime soon. But it becomes another place in which we can start asking these questions about what are the reforms looking at a macro level within these institutions in particular that ensure that political institutions and economic institutions of the country don't work against the will of people, and it's something that we'll be looking into going forward as well.
Okay. In the 90 seconds or so we have left, let's talk about the moral compass issue that you talked about. So what did the president actually say in terms of South Africa positioning themselves as this global moral compass at a time when they're under fire, as we know, from people of huge influence to the northwest of where we are right now?
So over the last 2 years, South Africa has really reclaimed its position as a moral compass at a geopolitical level, a position we used to hold during the 90s and the early 2000s, but has gone quite astray over the last 2 decades or so. But in his address, he really stood firm on his commitments towards international human rights, his commitment towards multinational institutions, and his commitment to essentially saying that we won't be bullied by people who think that South Africa is not doing the right thing. Now, the question then becomes, are we doing the right thing all the time? Are we reflecting on our own positions? It's the first time that we've been involved at a geopolitical level in a manner that doesn't shine the greatest light on us. But how do we make sure that we remind people about not just our history, but the trajectory that we want to go on? And I think it was a very powerful moment for the president to really stand firm and say, we believe we are, as a nation as a whole, doing the right thing right now, that we are on the right path, and that we won't back down on this.
And it is something that we can debate today amongst ourselves whether it's right or not. But in the next 40 years, the next generation will look back on moments like this and really saying that South Africa played a pivotal role in a multipolar world that really looks very dysfunctional now. And hopefully the president comes out of this looking as someone who had a bit of sanity during a very crazy time.
Okay, so therefore, just quick yes, no, that's all time we have. In terms of that comment, we will not be bullied. Was the president right in saying that or not? Yes, no?
I believe yes. Okay. There's a simple answer.
Got that. Let's leave it at that. And that's Dr. Rekotso Fetse Chikani speaking in this case on behalf of Defend Our Democracy.
Reigning champions and rock leaders Masanda Wana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. But the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. Ukono Zokala. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzanti's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your...
This February, the month of love and self-care. At SAFM, we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection, and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady, and you are my man.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
So we know it's February, right? Which means it's the month of love. So why not show your older car some love with low-cost insurance designed for older cars? I'm just trying to imagine all of that, right? With our insurance, Essential, accident claims are paid in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. Now add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns, then get savings with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. If you're interested, SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP T's and C's and information online.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, let's increase the audience engagement. I want to know what you think about some of the things we've discussed today and the overall conversations around whatever it is that moves the national pulse. I can tell you now that those South African soldiers that sadly passed away in combat of sorts in the DRC will understand they're on their way back home today, the bodies that is, right? Right, we go to Musina first up. JCK, go for it.
Hi, Ashraf, what you want?
I'm very good indeed, yeah. I'm feeling great, but yeah, good. You tell me, what's your point?
Man, this, what you call sauna has turned into a fashion parade, Ashraf, you know?
But it's always been a fashion parade. It hasn't turned into one. I mean, every time.
I mean, you know, if the way they are dressing, the attire that they're dressing, if it was a service delivery, we should have been on the top of the range in South Africa as a country, you understand? But if we can see, Ashraf, those people, what are they saying to us, the poor people who is on the street, who are going hungry? Tell them, look, those clothes that one person is wearing, it's not less than 100,000.
But do you think, I mean, look, I'm not for 100,000 rand clothing, but I mean, here's my question to you, right? Do you think that they must not spend anything? I mean, for them, what is that get-together before the SONA address? It's basically everybody it's almost like they're invited to a cocktail party, an annual gathering of people, like if you're working for a company and you have your Christmas party, this is the beginning of the year party. If they're spending the money themselves and the government is not spending, then why is it a problem for you and me?
I hear you, Ashraf, but what I'm saying, if you can see all the what you call the parliament sittings, they're not wearing like that. So, which means it's a fashion parade. They must just tell us it's a fashion parade. But it's like to us, they are shining to us, the poor people who are going hungry through the day, and they're not doing anything for us. Vis-a-vis, environment is so dirty, no water, no everything. You know.
All right. Well, I think you've made your point, and you're saying it sends out the wrong message. But that's been going on. I'm not saying it's right. It's been going on for many, many years. I'll tell you what, here's a thought to all of us. And I don't know the stats. I'd love to know what's the viewership numbers for the State of the Nation address from 7 o'clock to 8:30, right? And what's the viewership numbers for the hour and a half before the State of the Nation address, when everybody gets introduced and interviewed outside, and of course inevitably it's that person and his or her partner, that type of situation. I'd love to know what the numbers are, and I have a sense maybe you're right. Maybe more people watch the first one, not the second. Colin in Cape Town, go for it. Hi.
That is like a fashion parade. If I had horses there, I think it's a Durban July or something.
Well, it's not like a fashion parade. It's fashionable. It's the fact. It's not like.
Yeah, of course, they will wear their best. Ashraf, I've got 6-7 reasons why Donald Trump is hostile to South Africa.
Okay, but give me one reason. We don't have time for 7 reasons.
Okay.
We just said one.
Okay, Lady R, they abstained from voting against Russia.
Yeah.
Hamas came to visit their country.
Yeah.
They went to court against Israel, and who funded, and we had 300 soldiers or guards that came to South Africa from Libya. We had all that. We had
okay, I get the gist of what you're saying, because time is against us. Are you saying, therefore, that South Africa's foreign policy has impacted on how the USA is judging us versus what was said by Donald Trump this week? He didn't talk about foreign policy. He spoke about land issues.
Yeah, no. But the land issue is using that as an excuse, because that's been going on for 6-7 years before his time even. But the thing is this, America is watching, or we even had military exercise, a naval military exercise with Russia and China and those things.
Okay, but America, I mean, you've made your point. I asked you whether you think it's foreign affairs, and you said yes, right? Okay, Colin, got that. Let's get another quick call. Mbowana in Mahikeng, hi.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, good talking to you. Go for it. What's your point?
You see TRC Commission and the State Capture Commission. In TRC Commission, the Agri-SA never appeared into TRC Commission, and nothing happened to them. That's where the land issue was supposed to be discussed at the first time. In the State Capture, Zuma never appeared, and he went to prison. So you can see how our law works. So we cannot get into the bottom of the problem if we don't attend to it.
Well, I mean, yes, you're right. I think, quite honestly, the issue of expropriation needed to be agreed upon, not just as a principle, because it was, by the way, it's in our constitution, agreed upon by all the parties at the time it was negotiated, but it needed to be implemented far quicker than 30 years. Can you believe we're sitting with this issue for 30 years? Okay, got that point there. Okay, that's it. What we'll do, we'll take more calls, and I'll read some of your comments as well as soon as I can, but let's get to the news now. It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. Defense Committee seeks clarity on SANDF in the DRC, and NPA welcomes indictment in the AKA murder case. For SAFM News, I am Ondilambana, and a very good afternoon. Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence wants to engage the presidency on the extension of the deployment of the SANDF to the DRC. This after the president sent a letter to the committee on Christmas Eve last year, informing it of the extension of the troops' stay. However, some MPs seek clarity on what informed the decision to extend the deployment and the reason for the deployment. 14 soldiers have died as a result of conflict with M23 rebels in Goma, DRC, nearly 2 weeks ago. The co-chairperson of the committee, Malusi Gigaba, says a letter will be written to the presidency to seek clarity on these matters.
On why the letter to us arrived outside the 7-day window. And secondly, we require an explanation from the presidency on the exact meaning of the paragraph that talks about support to the DRC government to neutralize the rebels in pursuit of peacekeeping, so that we have clarity.
The Communications Workers Union has warned that there is a huge possibility the South African Post Office may cease functioning at the end of this month. The union says if the Postal Service Company does not receive the additional 3.8 billion rand in funding promised by government, SAPO's cash reserves will run out. In a statement, the CWU has expressed concern about the ability to pay salaries and sustain operations amid efforts to create a modern and sustainable post office. Reacted to the latest sitting of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, the union's Nathan Bowers says blaming the business rescue practitioners does not tell the full story.
So firstly, they must ensure that they negotiate with the BRP in terms of how this 3.8 billion rand will be allocated so that we do not stop functioning as a post office by the end of this month, which is a huge possibility.
A court battle is set to ensue after 3 of the Afrikaans e-hailing service Vanatu's vehicle were impounded by the Tshwane Metro Police Department for allegedly operating without permits. Vanatu has temporarily suspended its operations. Bildwan says Ayanda Ali has come under fire for her post on X asking whether Vanatu had operating permits from the municipality. Ali, who is also a member of Gauteng Provincial Legislature, says this has got nothing to do with race as it is mostly insinuated.
If Vanatu was a Xhosa speaking or Zulu speaking or English speaking only, if they don't have permits and they are on the road, we take exception to that when our drivers are being punished and hammered day in, day out for not having permits. So the Afrikaans issue will be ventilated in the courts when it comes to human rights violations and issues. We have an interest in that. We definitely want to know the outcome. I have my personal views, but on this matter, it's about permits and impounding vehicles and doing so in a discriminatory matter where it was only targeting our black drivers from Bolt, InDrive and Uber, and it was leaving Vanatu. Now that everybody's being impounded, let us look at the legalities of the impounding.
The National Prosecuting Authority says the serving of indictment to the 5 men charged with the murder of rapper Keenan, aka Forbes, and Tibelo Mutswane shows that the matter is progressing. The accused made a brief appearance at the Durban Magistrates Court today, where the matter was transferred to the High Court for trial. They are facing 11 counts, including conspiracy to commit murder, attempted and illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. NPA Regional Spokesperson Natasha Ramkin-Sinkara.
The serving of the indictment on the accused is indeed a good sign for the case, and it shows that the matter is progressing because, as the magistrate mentioned in court today, the matter is now trial ready. So it shows a progression in the case, in that they will appear in the High Court. The various applications thereafter will follow in.
The U.S. Deputy Special Envoy to the Middle East has said the presence of Hezbollah in Lebanon's proposed government crosses a red line. Morgan Ortagas was speaking in Beirut after meeting Lebanon's newly elected President Joseph Aoun. She's also consulting the Prime Minister-designate Nawaf Salam and Speaker of Parliament Nabi Berri, whose party Amal is allied to Hezbollah and has nominated all of 5 Shiite Muslim ministers to be in government. Speaking at a briefing, Ortega said Hezbollah has no role in Lebanon's future.
This is the first visit of the U.S. envoy to Lebanon since Israel escalated its military campaign against Hezbollah 4 weeks ago. On his previous trips, Amos Hochstein tried and failed to prevent the war, which has inflicted a heavy toll on people and infrastructure in Lebanon. Expressing his sadness over this, Mr. Hochstein said the current situation must change.
Recapping the top story, Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence wants to engage the President on the extension of the deployment of the SANDF to the DRC. I am Ondela Mbana for SFM News headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, January transfer spending reached record levels in 2025 and England wins second test to claim test series victory. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Lots going on around Durban. The M19 remains closed towards New Germany and Pinetown. It's closed at Mountbatten Drive due to a truck crash. There's a big lot of traffic in the Springfield area on Mgina Road, either going out to the closure or trying to avoid it coming inbound. Very heavy as well on the N2 southbound going into Spaghetti Junction. That's a broken down vehicle. Queues northbound through Queen Nandi towards Kumashu and a breakdown near Sabaya. So delays on the N2 in from the airport and the usual broken down truck around the Cliffdale area causing a backlog from Key Ridge. Plenty of traffic on Joburg's N3 today. Queues from Limbro Park heading down to Edenvale and then a separate queue through Edenvale down to Germiston. A crash at Cleveland on the M2 outbound. That's near Heldenace. That's a queue from as far back as the Denver side. Roadworks on the R21 at Tembisa holding you up towards the airport. And Cape Town, a crash on the busy Friday N2 out of town at Baden-Powell. It's a heavy queue passing Khayelitsha. Queue starts about Airport Runway. And roadworks have popped up on the N7 North near that Mumra exit up at Morningstar. Quite a backlog from Dunoon heading into a single lane section. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Pick your 6 lucky numbers and play Powerball and Powerball Plus for 31 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. Don't miss out. Play Powerball for an estimated 19 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 12 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. E2 is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Welcome to the show, the second hour of the National Pulse. By the way, after 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, in fact, on a Friday, we always have what we call the fireside chat. I chat to someone about a whole range of issues, not just one, multiple issues, and I pick his brain or her brain. Today it's the turn of Tony Leon. We'll talk to him after 5 o'clock. Look out for that, right? Well, the president, after yesterday, Sona's got his own challenge today. It's called the Golf Challenge. Well, but he said lots of things even at the golf course today. But before we get to that, some quick comments from you as we up the audience ante regarding, the land issue.
Good afternoon, Ashraf J here. I'm listening to your conversation with Johan from Agri SA. What a man, what a leader. We need these kind of people in this country because South Africa is not one. I mean, we are diverse, we have different views, but ultimately we want the same thing. We want a prosperous country, whether it is prosperous in business, socially, politically, but we want a prosperous country. So I am very encouraged listening to him. This is Jay. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jay. I tell you what, I'm not into politics. I'm not starting a political party, but if I did, I'd get you as a campaign manager. You speak my language, absolutely.
Hi, Ashraf. You know, for the last 10, 12 years, every forum, the Agri, and all these people have totally worked against our government. Going to the United States, going to Europe, telling them how bad we are, what land expropriation is, and what everything is. Now they realize that it's going to backfire on them, because if sanctions are imposed, the first losers will be the farmers and all of them. So all of a sudden, something has come home for them to realize what they've been doing is wrong. I hope they come to their senses. We live in the best country in the world. Appreciate it.
Well, there you are. I think interesting call. I'm not sure to what degree has Agri-SA's position shifted over the years, and maybe guide me if I don't know. But I think AfriForum we know, and you're quite right about that point, that the first casualty is them, because they've spoken about the poor people losing. That's true. But the first casualty are the people at the levers of power in that industry, and that's got to be the farmers. Right, let's talk about President Ramaphosa after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, so yesterday was the Sona Challenge. I suppose today is the Presidential Golf Challenge at the Atlantic Golf Estate, and President Ramaphosa took time out to try and from his teeing off and trying to get the balls in the holes to complete his 18 holes to speak about certain important issues. Right? Let's play some of those highlights. Okay. Firstly, he spoke about the DRC, and this is what he said.
What's happening in the DRC. As a head of state, I am not in the habit of getting into the mud and arguing with other people, other heads of state. Matters of importance are discussed properly behind closed doors, so I'm not going to get into the mud. And with regard...
Okay, that's very clear. Well, what about the other issue, the issue we just spoke about now, the issue I've suggested even Agri-SA, because their views are so different to AfriForum's, they need to head up to those influential people in the West who pronounce on policy. Well, President Ramaphosa, he says he will soon send an envoy to the world to clarify South Africa's land position.
Regard to the United States is a very important player on the global stage. They're the biggest economy, and they are our very important trading partner. So we intend to deal with them in a formal way and in proper engagement. And as I said, I'm going to be sending a delegation to the world, on our own continent, to Europe, to the Americas, and to Asia, to the Middle East, to go and explain our position, more particularly our G20 objectives, because we want this G20 to be an African G20, but also to be a G20 that is going to focus on the issues that impact on the global South and humanity more broadly.
Okay, but that's not all. He also spoke about, South Africa as a country, where we are and where we need to go.
We intend to get into the second phase, which will focus on water and local government as well, and the regulatory environment. So we are intending to do a clean sweep of everything that is holding our economy back. And at the same time, government itself is ramping up its public employment programs. We're going to be integrating them and making sure that we bring in young people, we bring in women, we bring in disabled people and give them opportunities, real opportunities of learning new skills, and we want to get into new industries. The green economy, artificial intelligence, the digital economy. So opportunities are going to really open up in South Africa, and we are really excited about that, and more particularly by being able to have a compact with business and labor and social organizations working together with us. So the growth of our economy is going to revolve around us pulling together. And I have a sense that South Africans collectively now want the country to move forward, and that nothing should hold us back, and government is going to be there to facilitate that.
And what about when there's deadlock, when effectively different groups are poles apart? How do you come together?
Well, anybody who says things are not for negotiation is not being realistic. We live in a world where we want to promote cooperation. We want to promote dialogue. We want to promote being able to work with others. And so we want people to put their views forward. It must be a festival of ideas being put forward, where we sharpen each other's wits and where we put wisdom and facts on the table. So we will be willing to talk to people. And now that we're president of the G20, we are the hosts. We are the dialogue leader. We are going to be presenting positions, and therefore we're open to talking, as we are open for business. And when you're open for business, you want to hear views, even if they're divergent to your own views, and you want to find consensus. And once we get consensus, we're then able to move forward.
And that point may be very telling as the host of the G20 summit. What does a host do besides entertain? The president's words were, we are the dialogue leader. Right, further comments as you lead the dialogue as well. Here we are.
Afternoon, Ashraf and the SAFM listeners. This is Alfred Gama at Bizana in the Eastern Cape province. Ashraf, this act of this expropriation bill is totally wrong. It is totally unaccepted. How can you take someone's land, or someone's property without compensation? How can you do that? Which means you steal that thing. Which means you are a thief. That is unacceptable. This is Alfred Gama at Bizana in the Eastern Cape province. Thank you, Ashraf, and the SAFM listeners.
Thanks, Alfred. I suppose you do realize that expropriation without compensation is not the norm. That will be applied in an exceptional case only, and only if it's in the public interest. That's not normal. It's not what has been said by others, that you're just going to grab things. It's clearly not the case. Right, further comments on the SONA.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I think some people who mostly criticize State of the Nation's address, they don't even know what is the rationale to have State of the Nation address. They don't know what the State of Nation's address is supposed to address or not to address. Because you'll hear people saying, why he didn't talk about potholes, why he didn't talk about that and that. Perhaps it is important that some form of education whereby SABC will be able to say to the people, the State of the Nation's address only address these particular issues, not these particular issues, so that when people criticize, they are well informed.
Well, I would think that certainly from an SAFM point of view, there's so many shows that talks about the issue of the State of the Nation address, like I think weeks in advance. So if people don't know, I'm a bit surprised. But then maybe it's a point taken. Let's see. Okay, maybe time for one more. We're going to play on the issue of crime.
Hi, Ashraf. I think the president, in delivering his SONA address last night, was very diplomatic, seeing he was representing the government of national unity. But the one point that I want to take him on is about crime. He's only talked about 4,000 detectives that will come into the system. But I think we need much, much more, because crime is the evil that is stopping all other activities in the country. Thank you, Naren Singh.
Well, Naren, think absolutely crime. Well, I'm not saying it's the only evil, but it is a huge impediment to South Africa's growth and South Africa's overall happiness as well. And I'll tell you what, talking about crime, let's talk about this. There's a WhatsApp channel that's been doing the rounds in the Cape, right, that showcases, would you believe it, school fights, like, fist fights and other things, all in schools. And it's a very popular channel because there's so much content. We'll talk about that next.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the Tooth Fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does every electrical company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Susampa on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Reigning champions and rock leaders Masanda Wana have a massive task to deliver maximum points to Korkop. but the Buccaneers are eyeing the top spot. They want to paint the capital city in black and white. Miguel Cardoso is up against Jose Rivero. Ukhono Zokhala. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Orlando Pirates FC. This Saturday, 8 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Alex in Standerton saying, Ashraf, listening to the Agri-SA CEO really shines a spotlight on people with racist attitudes like Creel and Trump, etc. We need people like Johan, the CEO of Agri-SA, who are prepared to stand up for the truth. Alex in Standerton. Okay, interesting one. Let's move on to the issues about the WhatsApp channel in the Western Cape. So there's this WhatsApp channel that's got 32,000 followers that effectively highlights, if I can use that word, highlight, video footage of like not just Spaza school fights, like really vicious school fights. Let's find out what the story is and what can be done about it with Bronak Hammond, the Western Cape Education Department spokesperson. Bronak, good to chat to you. In fact, what we'll do is we'll get to Bronak in just a moment. Let's just get that connection right. So we'll get to that in just a second. In the meantime, there's a comment about the NHI.
Hey, Ashraf, one of our very honest ministers this morning said there is no deal, referring to the NHI, and he was not in the meeting where this deal was struck, and he referred us, the public, and the news, SAFM, to go ask the people that were in that meeting, including News 24, what deal are they talking about, because he does not make deal outside of a parliamentary process. So there is no deal, according to the minister. He does not even know what we're talking about. Thanks.
Well, I heard that, and that, of course, is very different to what we heard the previous day. That story will come up again, I'm sure, after this weekend in terms of what actually has been decided, right? There's lots of further comment about issues like the land and the GNU.
Evening, Ashraf. This is Siyabonga Mzumela at Newcastle. Can't we vote for a government of a national unity again in the next 5 years? It seems like there's something good. It's gonna be happened. Can't we try to vote again to do the same thing? Let this political party to be united, then do something that we all want as a nation, as a country.
Well, when you say can't we, of course you can. You can do what you want, and if you make sure that no party gets the 50% plus at all, then parties will have to compromise and thresh out a collaboration or coalition agreement, and maybe you have another, whether you want to call it coalition or multi-party coalition or GNU, you could have another one like that soon, right? Okay, there's more comments. Again, a little bit about the land.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Emmanuel Mtorin Tepen. The land issue, and I think most of people in South Africa, they don't know anything about the land. The only thing that we need as people of South Africa is employment. But the politicians are busy talking about land grab, and they are dragging this country into USA sunshine. Yes, we know that the apartheid are fat. They don't care. Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I think where did the politicians, I'm talking of government, talk about leading people to a land grab? No, that's not true. And then the other part, I'm not saying it's exclusively so, but having land and using land as collateral, if you're a farmer, is a very, very important tool or a vehicle to be able to grow your wealth. That's why it's important, not just where you're staying, okay? Right, let's get to the issue of those videos and the channel, the fighting channel in the Western Cape. Bronak Hammond, the spokesperson for the Western Cape Education Department, with us. Bronak, good chatting to you once again. You're on the National Pulse.
Yes, good afternoon to your listeners. Not a great topic to be discussing, but one that everyone should be aware of.
Yes, I was going to just say that I'm sure when you heard about it, as the spokesperson, that would get your pulses absolutely racing.
Yeah, this week, unfortunately, I've had to witness a few videos that have been posted on this channel, and it really is disturbing. And I had a bit of sleepless nights over it, because it's really sickening to know that people actually want to watch these things and want to share it and distribute it further.
So tell us more about. I mean, it's a strange thing talking about it inadvertently raises awareness about the channel, right? But tell us more about the channel.
Well, we became aware of it through media, actually. They asked me about a specific incident that was on the channel, and then obviously a lot of other videos were there. I immediately contacted our safe schools and reported it, and also wrote to the information regulator in terms of POPIA, because it's evidence, that these learners aren't giving consent and their parents aren't giving consent, and that is against Section 35 of POPIA. So the WC has now actually written to the information regulator asking to investigate the channel. I went onto the channel and saw that they've got 32,000 followers, which is just disheartening to note that 32,000 people want to follow such a channel. And it basically posts videos of other learners fighting, and abusing and assaulting other learners. And it's really sad to see, you've got these kids that have been traumatized through the act of violence, and now they're going to be further traumatized by having this act of violence being displayed, throughout, various homes across the country, and, on repeat. These things pop up months after the event happened, and then even years after the event happened, and they have to re-experience that trauma, which is really, really hard for them.
I mean, clearly, and this sounds bizarre, but there's clearly huge entertainment value in this. I mean, that is why that channel has got 32,000 followers. No matter what when I think about it, people are very interested in those type of stories. Having said that, besides you raising the issue of the POPIA Act, what can you do about it? I mean, have you identified the channel owners? I mean, can you stop the channel? I don't know if you can you? Besides identifying where they don't have permission for, learners giving permission to have their fights being promoted?
Well, we have reported to SAPS as well, but our hands are, we don't have the authority or the actual means to, arrest and go into back into the technology of it and trying to find out who the actual owner of the channel is. But we're making awareness now, at least, about it. I know that, you can report it on WhatsApp. I've reported it on WhatsApp, but whether they're going to do anything, whether it's, it is anything against their laws and regulations on WhatsApp, that remains to be seen. Obviously it's a POPIA compliance issue in South Africa, but it might not be in terms of, Facebook in terms of WhatsApp. But for me, I believe that, showing assault of learners, they're, underage, and, in some of the, they're in compromising positions as well. So there's a lot of things that are, I think, disturbing about it, and I certainly hope that WhatsApp feels it's disturbing and closes down the channel. But anyone that is sent the link, can actually just report it immediately and then just delete it immediately.
Okay, that's simply deleting, but you're saying at this point in time you don't have the power to actually speak to WhatsApp and get them to shut the channel down. You can't do that.
Yeah, well, we're trying, but that's not beyond what they do with that information is beyond our control.
Okay. At this point in time, I mean, what shocks you more? The fact that, 32,000 people are following the channel because of the entertainment value, right? Or the fact that there's so many videos that are there, that have been clipped, that reflects a reality. Because whatever we may say about the POPIA Act, the fact is, and unless these are false, fabricated videos, this is a real reflection of what's happening in our schools.
Well, I think, I just got a report now on X saying that one of the news channels saying that one of the learners was arrested. I need to confirm that, but that's an important piece of information. And, it does send the message out to our learners that you cannot participate in violent acts like this. And it's not going to be accepted, and you could get arrested. And then further to that, those people that are videoing these acts, instead of just sending that video directly to the school so that action can be taken in terms of disciplinary action or further evidence for police, they are distributing it wider, which is also illegal. So, I think we need to crack down on both those aspects in terms of behavior of learners and asking parents to have these conversations with their children, about distributing these things and sharing these videos.
And what about stamping out the violence itself? I mean, at schools, I would assume there are programs anyway, but it's clearly not working, isn't it?
I think, our schools are doing what they can. We live in societies where there's, kids are traumatized. They see acts of violence all the time. There's drug abuse, poverty. And unfortunately, it does, slip into our schools. And, most of these acts of violence are happening actually outside the school environment. But, it's something that we, have a role to play. But certainly communities and our parents especially and caregivers have a role to play as well. Yeah. And sadly, there is, social degradation in society, but, we all need to just have a role to play to stamp this out.
Okay, and thanks for talking to us on a not-so-good news day, Ronak Hammond. Thanks for your time, the spokesperson for the Western Cape Education Department. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated South Africa's foreign policy position. He says Pretoria will continue to engage other countries on the country's foreign policy. The International Criminal Court has condemned the issuance of an executive order by U.S. President Donald Trump seeking to impose sanctions on its officials. In a short statement, the court says the move would harm its independence and impartial judicial work. And Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence wants to engage the presidency on the extension of the deployment of the SANDF to the DRC. This after the president sent a letter to the committee on Christmas Eve last year informing it of the extension of the troops' stay. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Groos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Probably the biggest story we're covering on the traffic desk this afternoon. Durban's M19 closed, heading out of town towards New Germany, Claremont and Pinetown. The road closed at Mountbatten Drive, Reservoir Hills area, due to a truck crash out by Dunkeld Road. So there's a lot of pressure behind this closure on Umgena Road as you head out through Springfield Park. So probably a good idea just to avoid that run out of town this afternoon. Bit of pressure coming inbound as well from New Germany, passing Westfield, passing that particular scene on your way to Durban. N2 South remains heavy at Spaghetti Junction. It's a broken down vehicle. It's been there a while. In fact, there's been numerous today. And the N3 out to Pietermaritzburg, heavy again, Key Ridge up towards Cliffdale. Joburg crash on the M2 at Heldenace Interchange. If you're coming out of town, it's quite a heavy backlog from the Denver side. A breakdown before London Road on the N3 South, so that's heavy from the Buccleuch Interchange territory. And if you're heading out of Cape Town, which a lot of people are on a Friday afternoon, major delay alert. The N2 is pretty heavy out through Hospital Bend towards Langa first of all, so that's unusual for a Friday afternoon. But then you hit the real heavy stuff, a crash at Baden-Powell Drive on your way out of town, pushing a traffic queue right back through Khayelitsha and back towards about the airport runway area. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
All right, to me, let's talk about the business of football, right?
Yes, FIFA has announced that clubs worldwide spend a record $2.3 billion. That's around 43.3 billion rands on international transfers in men's soccer in the January window. This is nearly a 58% increase from last year. And in terms of English clubs, they topped the table for spending on international transfer fees last month, spending $621.6 million. Around 11.4 billion rand in total. Meanwhile, Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis says that it's encouraging to see that South African contingent based abroad are doing well. This comes after forwards Hilda Mahaya, Jermaine Soposengwe and Thembi Kgatlana all scored for their respective clubs. The trio have always been the go-to frontline for Banyana, and Ellis says that seeing their form for the African champions ahead of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations title defense in July this year is absolutely great.
Very, very important. Jermaine and Tembi both on 4 goals. Hilda on 2, but Hilda still got a game to catch up. Saw the goal scored, fantastic goal that they scored. At Og as well. Confidence is high. So that really helps that they are doing well there as well. We know the mentality that they have. I mean, you look at the WAFCON 2022, we lost Tembi. Jermaine stepped up, Hilda stepped up. And we're going to need players, other players also to step up, but really encouraging for us that they are doing so well.
In cricket, the Sunrisers Eastern Cape are all set for the third SA20 final tomorrow, where they will play MI Cape Town at the Wanderers Stadium. Captain Aidan Markram has admitted that this season felt more of a struggle than last season, where they went on to win their second trophy without much hassle. In terms of this season, they had a poor start, losing their first 3 fixtures. They then finished third in the standings, meaning they had to play 2 knockout games without a break in between to make the final. In terms of team news, Sunrisers fast bowler Othniel Bartman is still uncertain for the final due to a hamstring injury. Elsewhere, Steve Smith hit his 36th Test century as Australia dominated Sri Lanka on day 2 of the second Test in Gel. Smith was 120 not out as Australia reached 330 for 3 at stumps, a first innings lead of 73. Now the right-hander joins England's Joe Root and India's Rahul Dravid on 36 Test centuries, the 5th most in history. In boxing, Mexican superstar Canelo Alvarez has agreed a 4-fight deal with Saudi Arabia's Riyadh season to set up a super fight with Terence Crawford in September. Alvarez will fight in Saudi for the first time in May before facing Crawford in September and then competing in 2 more Saudi organized bouts in 2026. In motorsport, Alex Marquez finished as the fastest rider at the MotoGP preseason testing in Malaysia as the Spaniard topped the timesheet with 1 minute 56.493 seconds, and then 2-time MotoGP world champion Francesco Bagnaia came in second after clocking 1 minute and 56 seconds while Fabio Quartararo completed a commendable preseason outing in third with a time of 1 minute and 56.724 seconds. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now.
Just a quick one. I just thought about it. We are in this Formula One race.
In terms of
yeah.
Well, we still waiting to hear from the board in terms of where exactly is it going to be hosted in the country. Remember, there's that competition between it being hosted in Johannesburg and Cape Town. So the board is still trying to see.
So they're still fighting internally before they fight.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see how long that's going to go. Internal, external fights. And we'll wait for that race to run its course, right? More sport in an hour.
Amidst misinformation and disinformation, where can we find reliable news? Turn to radio, your trusted source for truthful updates. For over 3 decades, we've upheld integrity as a signatory to the BCCSA Broadcasting Code of Conduct. Count on us for news you can trust. Say no to fake news. Radio, keeping it real since day one. A message from the National Association of Broadcasters. Tune in, trust, and stay informed.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get through the numbers with Paswane Mpatlele, who's the Senior Accounts Manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Good to connect as always, Paswane. You've got news locally and globally. Go for it.
After Sheriff and Children, it's Happy Friday. The anticipated labor market data from the U.S. flashed in a yellow sign across the markets of caution as it printed job growth less than expected of 143,000, a big decline from December's revised 3,007,000 jobs, while the wage growth was unexpectedly on the upside. It rose to 0.5 to 1-year highs, with unemployment declining to 4%. This had longer-term yields there in the U.S. up 4.5 on inflation concerns that may be creeping up. And while there was no much pricing on the bond yields when we see the lower end down around incoming rate cuts, kept over the 4.2 level and pushing higher, reflecting concerns that it is a pause in monetary stimulus coming from the US. Dollar made slight tick towards 108 level as market digest development. Locally, we got to digest that ambitious investment-led approach, SONA. Didn't see much optimism, a lot of optimism filtering through the market as we had some caution around the US labor market. Budget will give us more numbers and we'll get a better sense of the motivation and willingness. JC therefore kept a momentum of the week up 0.4, closing in on that 2% weekly gains, supported by financials up 0.8, industrial 0.4. Resource sector also reversed to gain 0.4. Europe, not much there. We see DAX flat, CAC FTSE down 0.1. US opened in the green, but a bit of caution. Nasdaq up 0.3, S&P 0.1. Dow is flat, so a lot of digestion will be taking place this weekend. Commodities, gold still continues to elevate slightly up 0.2, $2,863 an ounce. Platinum is declined a bit, just down below $1,000 at $995 an ounce. Oil remains below that 75 bearish at $74.70 a barrel. Meanwhile, looking at the rand, nothing much has changed there. We're sitting at 1843, rand against the euro 1911, rand against the pound 2294, and Bitcoin sits up gains but still below that 100,000 level.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. You have a great weekend, Paswane, and we'll talk on Monday, of course, right?
Yes, cheers.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, so we did say we have different angles around youth, the issues of SONA, right? And in the earlier conversation that we had, the issue of the youth, of jobs for young people and the issue of youth capital in particular came up and brought up, interesting enough, from someone speaking on behalf of Defend Our Democracy. I'm talking about Dr. Rekhotsofetse Chekane, right? So let's then pick up on that conversation about what does youth capital believe or feel about what's come out of the SONA, right? With me is Clotilde Angelucci, who's the communication and network lead at the advocacy campaign for Youth Capital. Clotilde, I appreciate your time. You connected now on the National Pulse.
Yes, thanks so much. We actually hosted a space with some young people in our network yesterday, straight after SONA, and the consensus was that it definitely needed a little more magic.
It needed more magic, yeah?
Yeah, like the SONA, President Ramaphosa's address needed more magic. It feels like, Ramaphosa assumes that economic growth will just create jobs, and we have, we've seen that the economy, even when the economy grows, jobs for young people are not really created. So it really lacked the strength to address the unemployment crisis. I mean, 6 in 10 young people between the ages of 15 and 24 are not in employment, and there has been an increase in the number of young people not in education, employment, or training. So this is definitely a hinder to growth.
And I take it to where you sit at Youth Capital. Would that be a specific slant or area of interest in what you guys do, which is to turn that high unemployment amongst youth around?
Yeah, so what was really interesting from yesterday is that the president celebrated the impact of the presidential employment stimulus, but its biggest program, the Basic Education Employment Initiative, really didn't receive any funding in 2024. So as a consequence, almost 200,000 short-term opportunities for young people were lost. So I think our take is that we definitely agree with the president's focus on public employment programs, but we need financial commitments in the medium to long term. So we can't just celebrate the impact of programs but then not fund them adequately. And I guess something else is also the focus on skills development. We based here in Cape Town, where students at CPUT and UCT are fighting for accommodation because of NSFA's delays in payments and communication. So rather than looking at skills development, we must ensure that young people complete their tertiaries. So looking at universities, looking at TVETs, and looking at NSFA's, which has been operating without a board since April 2024.
So did the president say anything that convinced you? And I know about the earlier skepticism, but did he say anything that says, okay, specifically around unemployment, in this issue, okay, he could well be on track, or government could well be on track?
So I think, the issue is that the president says the right thing. So I think the focus on skills development is positive. He also spoke about a graduate internship scheme, which I think is great, but it always lacks details. And then what happens is that these programs are not adequately funded. So I think the president is on the right track. I think president is on the right track, but we just need to make sure that national treasury comes through, because if the budgets keep on getting slashed, then we're not going to see an improvement. And I remember the first, like the SONA in 2021, for example, the president promoted or announced the red tape reduction unit for small businesses. And we never heard anything from it. So, and yesterday he reiterated. So we just need urgency from the president, because it seems like he lacks that energy and urgency in tackling this crisis.
And he may say that he's just part of an entire orchestra, and it's not that simple to be in sync. If you get my point. So outside of what he said, and as you say, sometimes good words, but the follow through is very difficult. Is there anything else? I mean, if you're at the ear of the president, if you could speak to the president directly, what's the one thing from Youth Capital's perspective you would insist, because you've got his ear, that they must do and show them the way how? What would that be?
Definitely public employment programs. Ashraf, we live in a country where there's not enough employment, but there isn't a lack of work to be done. And the presidential employment stimulus and the format of social employment has definitely seen the impact of double investment, working with communities around their socioeconomic needs, empowering people that live in communities to provide services that are really important, and providing an income in the at the same time. But these programs need long-term funding. This is the only way that implementing partners can come on board and implement. And I think also the private sector can see the impact of having a concept of social employment in communities. But they need to see the impact, they need to see the long-term strategy, and then it just requires a little bit of thinking around what happens to young people once they finish these programs. What are the next steps? How do we see the sustainable livelihoods? I think we just need more tangible steps, and I think social employment with funding is really, really important.
Yeah, I think what has come through in the last few days again is this mismatch between actual skills, attainment of skills, and then finding jobs to match up. And perhaps the best, it's not the only example, but the best example of that mismatch is the number of medical graduates who actually can't get jobs. Now, if people put in 7 years of their time can't get jobs, then what about those who are putting less years? There's a complete mismatch, and something has to change, isn't it?
Absolutely. But also, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they brought out a future of jobs report, and one of the jobs of the future, for example, is teaching. And if you look here at the Western Cape, the teacher budget has been cut, and the Basic Education Employment Initiative, which provides support in schools, has also been cut. So we just need to put we need to put money where our mouth is.
Good point. Money comes from jobs. Let me not go there. Clotilda Angelucci, the communication and network lead at the advocacy campaign for Youth Capital, that is. Much appreciate your time, right? Well, this is the National Pulse, and a reminder what we'll do, being a Friday, we have a guest for an hour, and we chat to that person for an hour about a whole range of issues, right? Some light-hearted, some very serious issues as well. My guest today is Tony Leon, so that should be a fascinating conversation, and you can join in too. That comes up just now, but before that, let's up the audience engagement. I want to hear your thoughts after this.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
All right, Tron, let's get as many calls as we can before we get to 5 o'clock. Right, first of all, we get to some of your voice notes.
Good evening, Ashraf. This is Siyabonga Mzumela at Newcastle. Can we vote for a government of a national unity again in the next 5 years? It seems like there's something good. It's going to be happening. Can't we try to vote again to do the same thing? let this political party to be united and do something that we all want as a nation, as a country.
Okay, in fact, I played that before. Apologies, but maybe there's emphasis in what that caller is trying to say. Right, here's another thought.
Good day, Ashraf. Could you please remind me of the article that you recommended for one to go and read? I'm not sure if it's yesterday or Wednesday. The one that talks about South Africa and false reports that Donald Trump is giving out on the issue of land. And the author also, it's Sipho Ntabazimbi.
Sipho, I'm a bit confused. I'm not too sure which one did I recommend. Or did I recommend anything? I'm not too sure. But let me see if maybe Keys or Temba will know better and they'll remind me what we actually mentioned on there. Thanks for that, Sipho. Right, there's another comment on the land.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Sugane from Tepet. You know, Ashraf, people are saying this Land Act is not the right act and not. Can they please brief me on the 1975 Land Act, if it was right or not? Because we seem to be going around where a certain act is good when it's going to favor a certain narrative or certain color. When it serves a certain other color, no, it's bad, it's wrong. Why is that? And if we were to compare America to Russia or China, just infrastructure, trains, airports, everything, America is a dead country.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. Look, it's complicated. I think the difference is 1975 was apartheid South Africa. This is democratic South Africa. Comments on the SONA? Sherwin, you've got some thoughts. Hi, Sherwin.
Hi, good day. Thank you for accepting my call.
Pleasure, go for it.
My comment around the content of the land. You are aware that the sovereign Aboriginal people of South Africa are the authentic owners of this country, but we do not receive that recognition. The race-based classification of 1950 has done an injustice, and it still does, as you and I are alive in South Africa. Yesterday, with the SONA, which is actually a report back to the nation from the incumbent president, Cyril Matamela.
Yeah, you need to make one specific point. I'm so sorry, Sherwin. We just don't have enough time. Just go for it. One specific point.
We would like to put it in context that the presence of our people on the Union Buildings ground are there for the redress and the concerns that the land should be returned back to the rightful owners, who are the coloureds.
Okay.
As per the race classifications.
Okay, Sherwin, I'm going to leave it there, not because you may be wrong, just because we don't have enough time, but I think you've made the point, and I think it's very clear what you've said, and perhaps it's a conversation we've had before. We may well have it again sometime down the line. So thanks for that call, Sherwin. Alex in Guyana, go for it. Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Right. Quick one. Your thoughts?
Okay. No, we just feel compromised here around Guyana because yesterday during SONA, exactly at 1900 hours, they took us to load reduction. So I believe that is not fair because the president was going to say something or should have said something that we're supposed to know as a country because we are part of this South Africa. But we're on load shedding from 7 to 9 last evening.
But remember, the president is not going to pronounce on every single thing on a State of the Nation address. I mean, that could take him like a year, in fact. He can't. He's going to give you broad principles and maybe one or two examples, but he can't do. I mean, I don't think you'd expect him to get into specifics for every single community, even if you deserve to hear about it.
Yes, Ashraf, but I don't think you get my point. I'm saying they took us to load the reduction. Like, we didn't have power at 7 until 9 in the evening.
So you missed it all.
Yeah, we missed the state because I think something like SONA is so much important to an extent that we don't believe that we should be taken to load reduction no matter what. we have the right to listen to what the president says.
Well, okay, I think your point is valid. I heard it incorrectly initially, right? You're absolutely right. Well, I would like to think there should be no load reduction at all, not just because of Sona, Alex, but yeah, I'm so sorry. Hopefully, there's lots of recordings on YouTube if you're able to get it, but I know it also costs money to listen to that in terms of in terms of the connectivity that it costs. But hopefully that's the best way to replay the entire thing, right? Alex, thanks for that call. Let's get to Peter in Northern Cape. Peter, go for it.
Good afternoon to you and your listeners, Ashraf.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
Ashraf, I get very perturbed when we speak about the issue of land.
Yeah.
The Land Act, the previous Land Act under the apartheid regime, did not even give you an opportunity to argue that you don't want to move. When we went to democracy, we had the Land Act that was amended, which said fair market value compensation for your land. When the outcry of the South African population was actually about land expropriation without compensation, we found a midway. This one says fair price.
Yeah.
Now, these things were there. We never expropriated land. The state never did that. Why is this a tool for mischievous people to go and garner international support against your own country?
Well, maybe I'm going to move on. Maybe the answer is just that. You use the word mischievous people. That's the answer. Peter, you've just given the answer. Thank you for that. Sydney in Acornhoek. Go for it, Sydney.
Brother Ashraf, to Sydney, the neighbor in Akonopus Pakris. Brother Ashraf, I phone to applaud Mr. Meneer Johan Korte, I'm sorry, the same clear, for coming out and clear to oppose the AfriForum, because it belongs to Agri-SA, for coming out clear to oppose the wrong information they send out there to destroy their own country, to backstab their own country. May our president include Meneer Johan Korte in his deputation. He will send to USA to clarify the true nature of this bill, this act, whatever the issue that is there, where AfriForum chose to backstab the nation, to badmouth us as South Africans. In fact, Meneer Korte made me to believe, Johan Korte, to believe more in GNU, that when we are together, black, white, colored, and Indians, we can become more better and bigger. Let's oppose those who are trying to destroy our country. AfriForum. Let's go all out and act against them.
Well, I don't know about all out. Just do what you have to do and just speak the truth about the issue. Thanks for that call, Sydney. That's why my point to Agri-SA is honestly, I think that Agri-SA's position, and the president has alluded to that they have to speak to people in the USA, that they need to be part of that conversation, not just speaking to us to say, hold it. Basically, who owns the narrative? You see, there's the truth, but also who owns the narrative. And the narrative is being, can I call it disfigured? Then you have to turn that narrative around with your own facts and figures, right? Here's some more thoughts.
Hey, Ashraf, one of our very honest ministers this morning said there is no deal, referring to the NHI, and he was not in the meeting where this deal was struck, and he referred us, the public, and the news, SAFM, to go ask the people that were in that meeting, including News 24, what deal are they talking about, because he does not make deal outside of a parliamentary process. So there is no deal, according to the minister. He does not even know what we're talking about. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, that's an ongoing issue. Let's see what comes up next week around that issue, isn't it?
Ashraf, the POPI Act is the protection of private information, not taking pictures in a public place. If this was the case, every security camera outside anybody's gate is illegal. Every dash cam in a car is illegal. Mike Islanen.
Thanks for that, Mike. I think we know that that's exactly the point the spokesperson made, which is the only recourse, that you know that you're breaking the law by showing videos of other people breaking the law without their permission. Richard in Brits, go for it, quick one.
Hello, Ashraf. Ashraf, I've been listening to you and your listeners talking about Donald Trump, what upset Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes a long way, Ashraf. You remember Donald Trump got upset the time when the BRICS Bank was formed and the de-dollarization. You remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you must get the clip and then you hear him.
But the de-dollarization hasn't happened. There's speculation. It hasn't actually happened.
Yeah, he was very upset about the story about de-dollarization and the BRICS Bank formation and so forth. And then he said, you could hear in his voice that he was very upset. He said that is not going to happen, and he will make sure that it's not going to happen. So I don't think the land issue is the main thing that upset him.
Okay, excepting he's quoting South Africa. He's not talking about the other BRICS countries, and like he's not including China and Russia and India and the others, the newer countries that have formed up as part of that conversation. Richard in Brits, thanks for that. Right, now, we can't take more calls on this issue. We can take it on the next one, because on a Friday, every Friday, we have one guest for an hour, and today my guest is Tony Leon. Right, let's get the news. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you. Ashraf Ramaphosa stands firm on SA's foreign policy and ICC slams Trump order. Good day to you. President Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated South Africa's foreign policy position. He says the country will continue to engage other nations on South Africa's foreign policy. This after the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated he will not attend the G20 foreign ministers meeting in South Africa in 2 weeks' time. Speaking in Cape Town, Ramaphosa says his envoy will engage U.S. officials on a range of issues.
The United States is a very important player on the global stage. They're the biggest economy and they are our very important trading partner. So we intend to deal with them in a formal way and in proper engagement. And as I said, I'm going to be sending a delegation to the world, on our own continent, to Europe, to the Americas, and to Asia, to the Middle East, to go and explain our position, more particularly our G20 objectives.
The International Criminal Court's condemned an executive order by U.S. President Donald Trump seeking to impose sanctions on its officials. In a statement, the court says the move will harm its independence and impartial work. Yesterday, Trump signed an order authorizing economic and travel sanctions targeting people who work on ICC investigations of U.S. citizens or U.S. allies such as Israel. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports that the order was handed down while ICC indicted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was visiting the U.S.
The court statement said it stood firmly by its personnel and pledged to continue providing justice and hope to millions of innocent victims of atrocities across the world in all situations before it. It called on the 125 states parties, which include South Africa, civil society and all nations of the world, to stand united for justice and fundamental human rights. Netanyahu, who has an international warrant out for his arrest, thanked Trump, calling his order bold, while labeling the court anti-American and anti-Semitic. In reaction, the European Union called for the court to be able to freely pursue the fight against global impunity, and that Europe would always stand for justice and the respect of international law.
Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence wants to engage the Presidency on the extension of the deployment of the National Defence Force in the DRC. This after the President sent a letter to the committee informing it of the extension of the troop stay. However, some MPs are seeking clarity on what informed the decision to extend the deployment and the reason. 14 soldiers died in conflict with M23 rebels in the DRC nearly 2 weeks ago. Co-chairperson of the committee, Malusi Gigaba.
On why the letter to us arrived outside the 7-day window. And secondly, we require an explanation from the presidency on the exact meaning of the paragraph that talks about support to the DRC government to neutralize the rebels in pursuit of peacekeeping, so that we have clarity.
Some Soweto residents say they hope that some of the things outlined by President Ramaphosa during his State of the Nation address last night will be fulfilled. They say youth unemployment, poor service delivery and the higher crime rates are a cause for concern. Brighton Makubu is a street vendor in Soweto.
Youth unemployment is too much.
and it's for a long time yabo baloku bapromise ukuthi bazokukhanda amakhampani aqasha abantu bangahlupheki namanje abantu basasokola. Youth unemployment is iba more service delivery kumele abe quick like mangabiza amaphoyisa manje ahlala azofika la ngo12 and kunento eserious eyenzekile. Cela ukuthi adelive nje badelive nje njengoba kuyijeni uyidelive pothole service delivery yabona.
Kimberley Magistrates Court has granted Clive Ferris bail of 10,000 rand. Ferris and his daughter, former Kimberley acting magistrate, Advocate Celeste Nameka, are co-accused in the murder of Charmaine Anthony in December last year. Nameka was released on bail in January. Ferris' successful bail application follows his appeal in the Northern Cape High Court. Top story, President Ramaphosa has reiterated South Africa's foreign policy position. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Willie Leroux starts at fly half for Bulls tomorrow. Amarim says that he does not fear being sacked even if Manchester United's slump worsens, and the Proteas announce 2 big additions for Tri-Series. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you.
No change on Durban's M19, leaving town, heading. And Claremont, the road is closed at Reservoir Hills, closed to Mountbatten Drive because of a big truck crash and a lost load of logs all over that highway earlier today. There's quite a big backlog of traffic behind that closure around Springfield on Umgeni Road, and some delays coming in as well as you pass that scene. Staying in Durban, stays heavy on the N2 South, Queen Nutty Drive down to a breakdown at Spaghetti Junction. N3 out of town, it's pretty heavy from Spaghetti Junction out to Paradise Valley, and then it gets really heavy Shongweni up towards the Cliffdale areas. You get caught in the roadworks and a breakdown. Also a breakdown just coming out of Pietermaritzburg near Market Road, slowing things up as well. Joburg, today we've been tracking some busy conditions on the N3 going south. An earlier breakdown at London Road is being cleared, so it's just really left some busy conditions between Alex and Germiston. Earlier crash on the M2 at Heldon, and still slowing traffic passing the Cleveland area. The N1 for Friday, fairly busy. John Foster up to about Garsfontein is the backlog there, and Cape Town after an earlier crash on the N2 at Baden-Powell leaving town. That's a backlog all the way through to Robert Sobukwe. Marine Drive, worth a mention. It's heavy from Milnerton, from sort of Lagoon Beach territory all the way through towards the lights at Dolphin Beach and Main Road. Very busy from Fishhook, Cork Bay, and then up into Muizenberg. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampa on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours, make a difference. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So it's Friday. It's just after 5 o'clock on a Friday. It means it's time for the Fireside Chat. And what do we do on the Fireside Chat? We get a guest in and we chat with that person for, well, all the way up to 6 o'clock. So, well, just under an hour, in fact, anyway. And really, it's what typically happens at a Fireside Chat. There's like no issue, no real agenda. We just talk. And we debate about many issues. We agree and often we disagree and that sort of thing. Today, my guest is Tony Leon. So, Tony, good chatting to you. And thanks for agreeing to be the guest here on the Fireside Chat.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Ashraf. I recall coming in studio, I must be, many years ago, to have a similar discussion in the middle of the afternoon with you.
Yeah, that was, I think we had that feature called In the Spotlight. In that period, I mean, I've moved on out of SAFM, come back to SAFM. You've moved on with your own life as well. It just shows you things just happen, right? But I mean, a quick recap. I mean, you're former leader of the DA. I also remember you being part of the PFP, if I'm not mistaken, in one of those, what was called one of the Young Turks at that time, right?
Yes, I was regarded a Young Turk radical leftist. Yeah. No one attached that label to me today.
I certainly remember that. You've also been a former ambassador, interesting enough, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. And then currently now the chairman of Resolve Communications. So maybe it's a good way to start with Resolve Communications. If you were the president of South Africa, considering that we had the sonar last night, I mean, what would you have resolved to have done if you had the opportunity and the privilege of delivering the State of the Nation address?
Well, I think I would have had clearer priorities. I mean, one can argue about some of the detail President Ramaphosa announced, but there was in fact so much detail, it was almost like a laundry list cobbled together from various government departments. And although he did top and tail it with some references to our constitutional democracy and concepts like solidarity and sort of no doubt inferring certain criticisms of Donald Trump after this week's brouhaha, you didn't leave the speech thinking, wow, okay, South Africa desperately needs economic growth, which it does. Here's the growth plan. This is going to join up. And these are the key priorities. You know, there was an announcement of a dam over here, roads over there, water obviously is a crisis. So it almost struck me as being somewhat themeless, and I would have made it much clearer. I think these speeches can do two things. They can either be a call to arms. I don't mean military arms. I mean empowering people to get up and do things and see the direction of government travel, or it can be an admission not of failure but of problems. And so I thought credibility-wise, the real problem was, while President Ramaphosa certainly identified some hotspot issues from water to failing municipalities, he didn't say, well, maybe we've got to rethink the approach we've taken over the last 30 years and start afresh. That was kind of implied in some of the remarks, but it was so buried and that you didn't get a deep or proper sense of clarity.
Okay, so let me play this one with you. I can't give you an hour or even 1.5 hours like Ramaphosa has got. I can give you 2 minutes to say, if you had to deliver a 2-minute State of the Nation address, like live now, you only got 2 minutes, right? Go for it. What would you say?
Well, unprepared and unscripted, I'd say, fellow citizens, South Africa is at an inflection point. We have a new government. It consists of several parties, not just one party anymore. And because we're a multi-party government facing a multiplicity of issues, crises, in fact, this is what we're going to do. On the economic front, we're going to introduce not marginal reforms, but fundamental reforms in everything from how the state procures to making it easier for businesses to hire labor at less prohibitive regulatory cost. As far as ports and rail and the other areas which have throttled our export market, we've done some good things, but it's not enough and it's not fast enough. And here is the further items on the menu that's going to be implemented, not at some point in the future, not after 12 meetings, but in 3 months' time. And you can call me back if we haven't started this process in earnest. On international relations, we can't be all things to all people. We've got to actually make South Africa's values much more aligned to our economic interests, to our international alignments. And this trying to propitiate everyone and oppose traditional allies is coming to an end henceforth. I would then go on to say in my State of the Nation address that South Africa, as the President Ramaphosa has indicated before, has many strengths, but we also have certain weaknesses that we need to address. And one of our weaknesses is we have parceled aside personal responsibility. People have got to be, in many fundamental respects, take the consequences for choices that they freely exercise. When those choices run up against the interests and the rights of other citizens, the state is going to crack down hard on them. And the state that I lead is not a state which is going to try and do everything. We've had this terrible tragedy in the Eastern Congo. It's time for us to end the idea that South Africa can be a policeman everywhere on the African continent or even in two different regions at the same time, and we're going to cut our cloth according to our needs. This might not fill people with a sense of wonderment, but I believe it does create a common purpose. Well, that's unprepared. That's how I would have said it.
Right, your 2 minutes are up, which means a lot more time to have a party now and maybe socialize post the soda.
Yes,
we'll pick up on those things just now. Well done on that. I can't help but notice what's behind you. And I did something similar when we chatted to somebody whose name escapes me for the moment. But you've got, I think it's a Weekly Mail poster.
Yes.
Can you see it? Because I can only think of its Weekly Mail. That goes back to the time when you were part of the PFP, I think, right? What does it say?
Yes, and I can pull it out down to you here. Yeah. I have it because it's a reminder. I've just written, it's got a picture of me as a 29-year-old. Okay. And it says, the just made it brand of victory cheer. The PFP held on to their Johannesburg municipal seat in Bellevue East this week with a narrow win over the National Party's high-profile Sam Bloomberg, founder of Suicides Anonymous. Here, young winner Tony Leon, 29, and local MP Harry Schwartz celebrate. So, that's why I keep it up. I'll tell you something as well about that, because I've just written a book called Political Backstories.
Yeah.
That I won my first election by only 39 votes, which actually meant if 20 people in Bellevue and Judith Paul, the first area I represented in the council, had voted for the National Party, not for the PFP, I wouldn't have gone into politics likely. I would have lost and probably gone back to being an attorney. And that's a kind of sliding doors situation, Ashraf. I don't know if you saw that great movie.
Yeah.
Where a woman takes a train, or gets a train on time, and then one set of things happens, and then she misses the train, goes back home, and a whole other universe unfolds for her. And I often think about those 20 voters who voted for me or didn't vote for my opponent, that how the course of my life between then and now would have fundamentally changed.
Well, it just shows. You're saying you're serious. You would have been, I mean, you're in law. You would have stayed that course, and that would have been like, goodness, I got defeated. And often that's a message to you, like, that you've tried, goodbye, isn't it?
Yeah, well, maybe I would have tried again, but it's possible I wouldn't have or been so crushed. I mean, I worked so hard in that election, and every headwind was against me. The leader of the party, Van Zyl Slabbert, had just quit 10 days before. My opponent was much better funded, much better known than me. Went for a rooftop suicide rescue. Whether it was real or not, I can't say from this vantage point. But that got on the front page of the Star. And, you know, nobody knew who Tony Leon was. I simply outworked my opponent in a very difficult area, and I managed to scrape a win. So I've often thought, well, what would have happened if I'd lost?
Well, let's. By the way, that person that I also referred to initially, as I did with you, was Rampela when I chatted to her a few months ago. And again, she has some fascinating things in the background, right? But let's then fast forward to, you know, the years after that, about what ifs, right? You were, if I'm not mistaken, one of the, if not the longest serving official leader of the opposition in Parliament. Are you still the longest? Is that record?
Yes, I am. I'm not sure, incidentally, I'm not sure that's, well, certainly since democracy in 1994. Sir de Villiers Graaff in the old system, white politics, was my predecessor, but since democracy, me. I'm not sure, incidentally, it's a label that I should be too proud of, because if you're long-term leader of the opposition, it means you never won power. So,
well, I was going to leave you to admit that.
It's an indication of incompetence.
Yeah. Have you? Well, yeah. Have you ever wondered the what if? Like, what if things had changed and I actually became the president of the country? Have you ever thought about? You must have.
Yeah, well, look, my late mother said that I told her when I was 6 years old I was going to be Prime Minister of South Africa. I always thought that was a bit exaggerated, but I guess to go into politics, you've got to have the rocket fuel of ambition, and you go in to win and to change things. And I guess I did, although I've never had executive office. Theoretically, when I was leader of the DA, I could have switched. My successor did that from being the leader to becoming the Premier of the Western Cape, or being a candidate for the Premiership. That I didn't do. I thought I'd run my course and I must make way for new blood. So I didn't sort of try and, get some other office. But I do think I would have quite enjoyed executive power because, as Tony Blair, who was leader of the opposition in Britain, obviously, for a short while and then became Prime Minister, he said, when I was leader of the opposition, I used to wake up every morning saying, what can I say? Now that I'm Prime Minister, I wake up every morning saying, what can I do? But folks I know who've gone into government, I mean, our government now, this national government, say that's a great idea, but actually doing things is not so easy. You push a lever, or it doesn't necessarily result in action. And, we can see, and I'm not just talking about where the state, and our state is very dysfunctional in a lot of areas, as you know, and your listeners know, but even where the state has good intentions here, where they embark upon some commercially smart thing, these things get caught in the weeds of procurement, of bureaucracy, of litigation, and it can become very difficult to effect change. But it doesn't mean you must give up on it. But I would have liked, perhaps, to have tried to move the dial from a position of authority rather than just from a position of opposition. Although I've got to say, without boring you on the topic, Ashraf, since you asked, when I got into Parliament after 1994, well, I mean, I was re-elected, but for the first time after democracy, and I became the leader of the party, and 3 years afterwards, when the Democratic Party was very small, had 7 seats, Nelson Mandela, the president at the time, offered me a seat in government as a cabinet minister, and I declined. And I won't bore you. I mean, there's a long backstory in one of my books. But one of the key thoughts I had...
You got 20 seconds, right? Go for it, 20 seconds, yeah.
Was that if we went into government, there would be no effective, credible opposition, and the Constitution would suffer from that. So I do think actually having a strong, credible... well thought through opposition is absolutely indispensable.
Okay, which means I must talk to you about the GNU, and I'll do that right after this.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit cfi.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45, proudly sponsored by CFI. CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady and you are my man.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
It's the Fireside Chat, the Friday Fireside Chat. My guest is Tony Leon, former leader of the DA, former ambassador as well, but now the chairperson of Resolve Communications, right? So Tony, I mean, interesting that you just ended where you did about not taking up a cabinet position. What we spoke, you and I, that is, a few months ago, I think just after the election, and the issue of Gauteng was unresolved, and you were giving advice to the DA about what should be happening, right? So from May 29 to negotiations around GNU to what we have now, what's your one word to describe the GNU?
I think it's fragile. It's not broken, but it's, I think, in the words of the leader of the DA, needs a reset, but it's a work in progress. Look, the distinguishing factor between 1997, when Nelson Mandela offered me a seat in his cabinet, and now is that President Mandela was inviting me in as a guest. So my influence would have been vanishingly small because I would have been there really on his terms. I think the difference last June, when this new government of national unity was negotiated, is the DA entered this government as a result of the election results, not because they were being, offered generous terms by the ANC. And I think that's often lost sight of. So I think, obviously I was part of the team that led to this. I think it was the right decision at the time, but it's a decision that you must constantly review and evaluate. And I think we'll see, hopefully, in the budget in 2 weeks' time, the fruits of some inputs from a market-oriented, growth-friendly organization like the DA in that budget. If we see the normal kind of, state-centric policies of the ANC and the initiative-crushing, freedom-depriving measures such as the NHI, then I think it's going to be hard for the GNUs as constituted to continue. But, I always remember what someone said in the era of Margaret Thatcher, Tina, there is no alternative. I mean, in South Africa, there is an alternative. That's the EFF and the MK. Of course, they are quite legitimate alternatives. But I think folks who want to blow up this GNU need to think, well, what's going to be the economic and social consequences of parties going into government who don't respect the Constitution, who don't believe in the current rule of law we have, and whose economic prescriptions, are really drawn from the playbook in Venezuela. Then I think we've got another set of issues.
Okay, but therefore, are you not answering? You're answering this anyway, which is that there's not a day that since the GNU was formed that the two major parties, the ANC and the DA, appear not to be at loggerheads. It's like every day they disagree, which has surprised many people because many people felt they'll just co-opt each other and they'll all just smile and be great chummies, and that's clearly not the case, right? But in their arguments daily, the pronouncement has always been, is this the end of the GNU? And I've argued, and I'm just want to get your confirmation that I'm suggesting that no matter what, they've made a pact to come together for right or for wrong, and you've been part of that conversation, and they both will not walk away from each other. Not now, because of some of the factors you've mentioned.
Yes, I think it would be very incautious to do so, but obviously, listen, I need to just say this. This is Tony Leon speaking. I'm not speaking as a spokesman for anyone because I'm not involved in the governance of the DA, and I don't wish to be. But I think, people need to take a long, hard look at things, and it would improve, I suspect, if there was more bilateral discussions between the DA and the ANC and their leadership. They might be happening. I think they should happen more frequently. Because at the end of the day, although it is a GNU and that's nice fig leaf, there are only two parties in it, the ANC and the DA, who actually between them or combined have a majority in parliament. So you can have 10 parties as there are on the GNU, but the ANC plus those other 8 don't get to 50%. And so what is needed is for the two senior partners, not because they are arrogant, but because that's what the electoral arithmetic says, to find each other. Look, I happen to be advised that it's not an everyday war between the two parties. I think at some level on a lot of things they probably do agree and have common cause, but I think there are flashpoints, and what you can't do is to pretend they're at Edom. I mean, one of the ANC negotiators in our ANC-DA negotiations early on said to us and to me, look, the problem is, and then we only had 2 weeks to get to an agreement, is that for 30 years we've been at each other's throats, and now we've got a few days to make an agreement. Well, that was a very profoundly historically correct statement. And even then, I mean, so we got a statement, although I think the ANC has not always been in good faith in implementing it, but I'm not going to have an argument about it now. But they've only had 7 months to find each other. And while that's a reasonable length of time, it's not a great deal of time.
So, sorry, therefore, it would be accurate to say, much to the annoyance of others, that the GNU is a coalition between the ANC and the DA.
Well, it is a coalition in the sense that those are the two parties who can make or break the government. And also, it's clearly a coalition without going to semantics, if you go back to that agreement, because there's a specific clause 19, which a lot of blood and effort was spent, which says that in the event of there not being an agreement between all the parties to achieve consensus on the issue, then the parties that comprise 60% of the seats in the National Assembly in the government will prevail. Now, there are only two parties that reach that total, and that's the ANC and the DA. So, I mean, that is specified in the agreement signed by the ANC, the DA, and all other parties, because every other party in the government also signed an agreement with the ANC, which contained those clauses.
Okay. Before we get to the break, I asked you to describe the GNU, and you said your one word is fragile. What's your quick one word, therefore, to describe the actual state of the nation?
Challenging would be my one word. We can't say anything other than that. We got, on the expanded, we've got 12.5 million work age people who can't get work, even if they're still looking for it. 8.5 million on the narrow definition of unemployment. We've got our major city, Joburg, where I first served as a councillor a long time ago, without being able to provide reliable daily supplies of tap water to its residents. And we've got a much more complicated world, as everyone saw this week and has seen since Trump's arrival in the White House. So where the old nostrums, of being rewarded for the years of struggle, for the fight against apartheid, aren't going to cut it in this new, very complicated, deeply transactional world that we find ourselves in. So that is the challenge. I mean, those are some of the challenges.
Okay, hold that, because I want to pick your brain on Donald Trump, because obviously people want to know what you think about him. We'll do that in a moment. Let's get the news headlines. It's 5:30. Here's Greg.
A quick look at the headlines. The prosecutions accused the defence in the 255 million rand asbestos roof removal case of playing delaying tactics during the pre-trial hearing in the Free State High Court. President Ramaphosa's reiterated South Africa's foreign policy position, and energy experts have warned that if people continue with illegal connections, it poses a threat to the already overstretched power grid. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM.
Got something else to change.
Traffic.
Well, the M19 out of Durban towards Pinetown in New Germany remains closed. A big truck crash, losing a load of logs as it overturned earlier on that wet, slippery M19. The road closed between Reservoir Hills and the Dunkeld Road. Big backlogs back in towards sort of Springfield Park on Umgeni Road as you'll line up to get out to that closure. The alternative route is pretty heavy as well. A breakdown on the N2 south at Spaghetti, so you see it coming through in Nunda. And then the N3 outbound, it'll take you to Pinetown. There's a crash at Paradise Valley, so quite sluggish getting that way as well. Breakdown at Cliffdale still with us. Heavy queues again from Key Ridge area. Always worth checking. Pretoria's N1 on a Friday afternoon. Today it is busy from Boerta Avenue up towards Garsfontein. Before you're out of that, the N3 is getting slow again from Edenvale down to the Germiston territory. And if you're coming out of Cape Town, the earlier crash out of Baden-Powell on the N2 is being cleared. It backed traffic up fairly substantially, so there is a backlog between the airport and Niue at Khayelitsha. The other traffic that's catching our eye today is Muizenberg. A lot of traffic in the central Muizenberg area, Beach Road Atlantic and Main Road both ways. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
So my eyes may be on the cricket, but your eyes on rugby.
Yes, Jake White has made a bold choice and he handed the number 10 jersey to Ville Leroux for the Vodacom United Rugby Championship derby against the DHL Stormers this weekend. Leroux will start at fly half for the first time since joining the Bulls after his amazing cameo at fly half from the bench against the Lions 2 weeks ago. He will partner with Ambrose Papier as the halfback combo, and it's a big one for the Bulls, and also Kanan Moody, who's up for his 50th cap. Meanwhile, the Stormers have been forced to make a number of changes due to injuries. Mane Lebok has not recovered as yet from a knee injury, and he'll be replaced by Yuri Mathi. Ruan Nal is still out with a shoulder injury. Tight head prop Neethling Fisher is out and with a concussion, and loose head Ali Vermaak with a leg injury. And Stormers coach John Dobson has opted for a 5-3 split between forwards and backs for this game, as opposed to his more common 6-2 split. In cricket, the Proteas have added Lungi Ngidi and Tabrice Shamsi to the squad ahead of their ODI Tri-Series opener against New Zealand on Monday. They were recently hit with the massive blow of star pacer Gerald Coetzee, who is ruled out due to injury. And in preparation for the ICC Champions Trophy, the Proteas have travelled to Pakistan to play against both Pakistan and New Zealand. In terms of the Champions Trophy, it's scheduled to start on the 19th of February, and South Africa will start its campaign against Afghanistan on the 21st of February at the National Stadium. Elsewhere, the Sunrisers Eastern Cape are set for their third SA20 final tomorrow, where they will play MI Cape Town at the Wanderers Stadium, and captain Aiden Markram has admitted that this season felt more of a struggle than last season, where they went on to win their second trophy without much hassle. They had a poor start, losing the first 3 fixtures. Then they finished third in the standings, meaning they had to play 2 knockout games without a break in between to make it to the final. Now, in terms of team news, Sunrisers fast bowler Wardnell Bartman is still uncertain for the final due to a hamstring injury. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns midfielder Themba Zwane says that he's determined to fight for his place in coach Miguel Cardoso's squad. Zwane recently returned to light training after suffering a partial Achilles tendon tear last year, and he says that his injury setback does not deter him because he has the mental fortitude and faith to overcome any challenge.
It was difficult at first, but obviously with the support of my team, my family, I had to push myself, and I'm happy now at the moment. I'm running outside, I don't feel any pain. It's just that it's tight at the moment, but overall I think so far so good.
Elsewhere, Ruben Amorim says that he does not fear the sack, even if Manchester United's slump worsens under his watch. United's defeat to Crystal Palace was a 7th loss in 13 Premier League games under Amorim, with the result leaving them in 13th place with a -6 goal difference. Now, the Red Devils play Leicester City in the FA Cup 4th round tonight, and will definitely be looking to forget their worst run of home form in 131 years. Also, it's a reunion with the Ruud, obviously, and I've always asked myself, what is his thoughts about how Man United are currently doing? What do you think, Ashraf?
I thought he was going to answer it. well, here's the thing. I have to tell you, you said, and Ruben Amorim's been very disappointing so far in terms of performance.
Yes.
What happens behind the scenes is another story. But you said they should give Ruud van Nistelrooy the position, and he's lost 7 in a row for Leicester City.
I saw, yeah. He's also not in the
And I
radar
told you
position.
he's unproven because he was unbeaten for United as a coach, but he had 4 home games, and 2 of them were pretty easy home games. So,
okay.
yeah. I don't know what
I
they
don't
think.
wonder what he's thinking right now.
Well, maybe after tonight he'll tell you. After Leicester beats Man United or something along that line. You never know. Yeah.
Well, still staying with football, some good news for Manchester City with midfielder Rodri being included in the club's Champions League squad for the next stage of the competition. They play Real Madrid over 2 legs in the playoff round, and Rodri has not played since tearing an ACL in a 2-2 draw with Arsenal in September, and at the time he was ruled out for the rest of the season. Well, with that said, it is a wrap from my side. Good luck with your match today, Ashraf.
So my match? Oh, you mean the United?
United,
Well, if they lose today, my goodness, I want to see what Ruben Amorim says. What's your weekend plans, very quickly?
Watching sports.
That's it?
Yeah.
Sport.
As per usual.
Okay, all right. I'll be watching some sport tonight. I've got a meeting. I'll watch United. I may go to the SA20 final. I'm trying to sort out my ticket, maybe. Hint, right? And then maybe some shopping, some family stuff. And we'll play paddle tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock.
Hopefully
tomorrow
it
8
doesn't
o'clock.
rain.
Sunday 6 o'clock on the courts. Come on, man. Play paddle. Yeah.
Right then, ke nna tumeng kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
Pick your 6 lucky numbers and play Powerball and Powerball Plus for 31 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Friday. Don't miss out. Play Powerball for an estimated 19 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 12 million rand today. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
This could be me, you know. Ever stood in front of a fridge hoping for a quick decision only to find, well, nothing. So you just order what you had yesterday. Well, getting your car covered online with Santam is faster than deciding what to have for lunch. It only takes 2 minutes. To switch, visit santam.co.za. Santam, this is freedom.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, Jimmy, I know you have no big show today, but certainly you can reflect on some of the stories today in terms of the markets, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. It's certainly been an interesting day on the markets front. It seems as though markets are going through a bit of an uncertain time, almost as if markets are feeling quite emotional. You never really know if markets are going up or down. Markets are mixed in almost all trade, starting with Asian markets. The Chinese markets, the Hang Seng and the Shanghai Composite were both in the green, whereas the Nikkei in Tokyo and the ASX in Sydney were in the red. European markets also a bit of a mixed bag. The DAX eking up 3 basis point gains there, but the CAC 40 down about 0.1% and the FTSE down about 0.25%. US markets at the moment are also in the red, with the Nasdaq down 0.75%, the S&P down 0.33%. If we look at our own local markets, our equity markets had a good day. The resource counters marginally in the red, about 3 basis points there, but industrials up 0.33%, financials up 0.75%, the all share up 1/3, and the top 40 up almost 0.5%. The rand also gaining a lot of ground against the US dollar again, back at 18 rand and 35 cents against the dollar. 1 euro is at 19 rand and 4 cents at the moment. 1 British pound is 22 rand 84 cents, and 1 Australian dollar is 11 rand and 54 cents. The gold price moving back in positive territory. Had a bit of a slump yesterday, but is sitting at around $2,885 a fine ounce, now about 0.5% up. Brent crude still below $75. We're still happy about that. We're at $74.86 a barrel. Platinum still above $1,000, $1,033. Palladium lagging behind, now at $990 a fine ounce there. Anyone looking at Bitcoin, that's still below 100,000. It's about 98,400 or so, around 1.8 million rands there. So next week, we don't really have a lot of data points coming out from a South African perspective. We are obviously keenly waiting the budget speech that will be the week thereafter. But it seems as though markets are still just trying to find a bit of their footing and trying to get settled. So we'll keep an eye on that going into next week to see what could potentially be driving the markets. We know that for the last couple of days, every time the President of the United States has opened up any of his social platforms, markets have reacted and responded. We're going to hope that the next week we start to see a bit more quiet from the White House, and potentially markets can start to get back to normal. But we end out the week in some positive territory from our own local markets, despite the fact that the likes of Sasol made new all-time lows, breaking below an 80 rand support level that we've kind of seen there for a while. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the likes of Sasol, the likes of Bidcorp that made all-time highs or new 52-week highs. We'll keep an eye on them as well. But going into the weekend, we take a stronger rand, we take stronger equity markets, and we look forward to a good week next week.
And that's you. So you have a good weekend, Jimmy, and we will connect Monday, right? There we are. I think Jimmy's gone. Right. In fact, let's get then now to what we'll do is we're going to get to Tony Leon once again, continuing the fireside chat right after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right. I'll tell you what. So we'll talk up to 6 o'clock. As always with the fireside chat, we can't take more than 3 calls max. So whether you're calling or sending us a WhatsApp voice note, 3 is probably the most we can afford in terms of actual time. So if you're up for it, that's fine. 086 000 2032. WhatsApp is 0614 104 107. Right, Tony Leon back with me. So Tony, you're there, right? After that break we had. So Donald Trump, I would think it's like, I'm trying to understand it. It's like the All Blacks and the Springboks, or Kaizer Chiefs and Manchester United, or perhaps Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, or Man United and Liverpool, and I can look at further examples. You're either one side or the other with regards to Donald Trump. Where do you fit in with him? Okay, I think in fact we are after the. Have you got you there now, right, Tony? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Sorry, you may have. Did you hear what I asked you? I'm not too sure.
No.
I have to repeat it. I said Donald Trump. There's no in between. It's Springboks, All Blacks. It's Orlando Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs. It's Manchester United, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona. That sort of thing. Which side do you fit in? Donald Trump. Like him, don't like him.
I think I should take the Fifth Amendment, since I was going to talk about movies and books I like. But anyway, let me say this: I don't admire Donald Trump. I wouldn't have voted for him had I had a vote. But I also recognise that the way he does things, which is completely unprecedented, and how he's done them, is very significant. And he is the leader of an economy which, out of the G20, is by far the biggest. It's a $29 trillion economy. It's number one in the G20, $11 trillion ahead of China. And wow, we are 20th of the G20 economies by comparison. So we're at the bottom, he's at the top. And, he might be a bully, and he probably is very much given to being confrontational. But a lot of people respond to that, not just in America. Ashraf, I was looking at some poll the other day, which said that, more South Africans view Donald Trump favorably than unfavorably. So there's clearly something in the way he conducts himself in his country and the world which appeals to people. I guess a lot of people want a strong man, or they want decisive leadership. And whatever the other merits and demerits of Trump, that's what he provides. Look, I don't know how sustainable what he's doing is in the world, even in America, shutting down agencies, furloughing tens of thousands of civil servants, closing off America's free trade options. But he's certainly doing a lot of things, and he's a disruptor, and he's changing the rules of the game in front of our eyes. So I think, whatever I think of Donald Trump, I'm not talking personally, but politically, is perhaps much less relevant to the impact he's going to have or is having on our world, which is very significant.
Well, I agree he has an impact on the world. Therefore, now we'll talk about books, by the way, in a second, or the books that you prefer. Just so you know, Ramaphosa's comments, "We will not be bullied." I mean, didn't mention names, but we know who's he talking about. I want to get your opinion on that.
Well, he's correct. South Africa is a sovereign country. It has its own interests and values set to pursue in the world. But, that sounds a nice statement. But I also think, in a moment of calm reflection, the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa chose to get on a telephone call with an unelected American, formerly South African, Elon Musk, indicates that in reality, I think Ramaphosa and the government has a keen appreciation of just how important and influential the United States is. I mean, you just look at AGOA, which I think we are in danger now of losing, not just because of our stances in the world, or that will be a contributing or aggravating factor, but because there's a neuralgia in the White House towards these kind of unilateral trade preference agreements. And it's going to have a terribly severe impact here, not just in terms of the percentage of exports that we manage under it, but just in the whole chain of everything from the automotive industry in this country to the agri-processing supply chain we have. It's going to be big impact, much more than just the trade metrics suggest. So you do want to do your best to repair that relationship. And I think it's fair to say that over the last decade or so, never mind that Trump is now in the White House, and I'm sure South Africa or the government was betting on a Kamala Harris win, which didn't happen. South Africa's basically neglected its relationship with some key allies like the US, who've actually been very generous partners to us. And it might be late in the day, but I think they need to repair that.
You made, at the outset, you spoke about, South Africa and its old allies and whether that serves South Africa's interests right now. It just gets me to the last thing in terms of the current affairs issues. There's so much debate about the whole Israel-Palestinian issue, right? I'm not going to spend half an hour talking because we don't have the time, accepting what needs to happen to achieve a sense of a lasting peace with social justice tied to it.
I I think what absolutely needs to happen, and it's now a vanishing idea in the light of the 7th of October attack by Hamas on Gaza, from Gaza into Israel, I think it is the two-state solution, much spoken about, never cited, which has been on offer at various times and came very close at Camp David in the days of Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak, and Bill Clinton to happening, and then Arafat declined to agree to it. I think that's the only way forward. I don't think the ideas of expelling Palestinians from Gaza, the latest suggestion of President Trump,
to Saudi
is going
Arabia,
to be remotely acceptable. But look, two states means two states, and that means Israel is going to have to give up territory on the West Bank that it's currently occupying or has settlers in. But it equally means that the Palestinian leadership has got to recognize the sovereign right of Israel to exist. You can't have one without the other. And, let's be frank, Hamas, Hezbollah, and their sponsor, Iran, do not want a state of Israel to be in being. I once heard a very smart chap, Bernard Lewis, at a conference 20 years ago, say, you can negotiate your borders. It's very difficult, and Israel's borders, I think, do need to be renegotiated to something approximating where they were in 67. But you cannot go and have a negotiation about your existence, because no government, and certainly the United States wouldn't support it, will accept the idea that their existence is up for negotiation.
And the last thing on that, I mean, I think it's a fair point, right? And I've certainly made that point as well. You can't wipe out communities or countries wherever they come from. Similarly, I mean, a lot of the pronouncements on the Israeli side does suggest that they also don't really want the existence of the Palestinians. And I mean, can you see the complexity of it all?
Oh, absolutely. Look, there is an extremist, rejectionist element, or expansionist, should I say, in the heart of the Israeli government. You've got people, I'm not sure who's in, who's out, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. I happen to be a Zionist. I believe in the sense I believe in the state of Israel's right to exist. I happen to be Jewish, as they are. I have nothing in common with the politics and the extremism of people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. I don't. But I think, as you see around the world, extremists arise to the top, populists get to the top, when the moderate center doesn't either have a partner for peace, or in that case, or generally doesn't have a compelling answer to the issues of the day. So, you can't have it both ways. That's all I'm saying.
More to come from Tony Leon and the Friday Fireside Chat.
Action is getting tougher in the second half of the league. The Folks want to ease off pressure with a win, but the Eagles aim to fly with 3 points to remain in the top 5. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Mönchengladbach FC versus Eintracht Frankfurt FC on Saturday, 8 February at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we got about 7 more minutes to go with Tony Leon and the Fireside Chat. Tony, let's talk about books. I mean, I think you mentioned there's a new book of yours coming up, but the last one I remember you delivered was in 2021, something like Reflections of My Troubled Land, right?
It was called Future Tense.
Yeah.
And I might, without quoting myself, nothing more irritating when people do that, I did say that after 30 years, it's a kind of judgment day, and there were a lot of liberation parties that lost their majority after 30 years. I don't know if it would happen in South Africa, but it did. So at least one forecast in that book proved to be correct.
At least one, right? What's the next book that you coming out with soon?
Well, it's just currently literally going for typesetting, so it'll be out in May. It's called Being There, Backstories from the Political Front. And I was asked by my publisher to write a book where I deal with, things that the events are known, but not the sort of background color. So talking about the Middle East, I had an extraordinary lunch with Yasser Arafat. I had a meeting with Ariel Sharon. So I described that, a lot of interesting detail in the backstory there. And then I go on to look at the perils of political fundraising and some of the larger-than-life characters I met having to, go on that particular trail as leader. And then I've got 3 or 4 chapters on these negotiations.
Okay, wow. That would be fascinating, right? So is there a book?
Well, I hope so.
Is there a book besides your own that you recommend we should be reading?
Oh, look, my books are come and go, but if I can mention 2 I've read recently, the first is an extraordinary book about. It sounds like an obscure topic, but isn't. It's about Northern Ireland. It's called Say Nothing, and it's by Patrick Radden Keefe, the same guy who did the book about the Sacklers called Empire of Pain. He's an extraordinary writer, and he gets you right behind. He takes the human story of the suffering on both sides and a particular kidnapping and murder of a woman, a mother of 10 kids, and he looks at all the political dynamics and all the double talk and the double dealing. A remarkable book. Another book I read recently, which it sounds like ancient history, and one way it's by a great British historian called Richard Evans, and it's called Hitler's People. And what he takes, everyone knows the story of Hitler and Himmler and Goering and Goebbels and all the other henchmen in the Nazi hierarchy, but he takes some of those very well-known names and some completely unknown names, and he actually looks and says, what are the conditions for people from all sorts, from literally gutter snipes to highly educated middle-class people like Albert Speer, to actually put themselves in thrall to a monstrous tyranny. What sort of country and social conditions? That is a fascinating read, and I recommend it. I really recommend it. Even though you think you know the story, it gives you new insights into one of the most notorious stories of the 20th century.
I often, ask this about people in terms of what is your purpose, which, as you know, is not exactly like what's your job and what do you do. What has been your purpose?
Well, I like to think it's been to make a difference, but perhaps I should qualify that to say to try to make a difference, not just to wake up in the morning and say, how do I get through the day, but how can I move the dial, whatever it might be. I mean, the great George Eliot in Middlemarch said that the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts. So you don't need to, go and make a big speech or the State of the Nation. You can do specific things, a small act of kindness, help to someone less fortunate.
Give me one story very quickly, one simple thing you've done away from politics. That's just something else.
Well, look, I don't want to be self-referring and talk about my good or bad deeds, but when younger people, I know it's a particular passion of yours, Ashraf, come to me and they seek counsel, or even if I can help them get an opportunity, I generally, sometimes the email disappears because I'm 68, so my technology is not as brilliant as the youngsters. I generally try and do something. I don't just ignore it and say, something I can do, or go and read a book. I try to engage with such people where I can and, offer some either practical advice or some concrete assistance where possible.
Well, that's a way of, yes, and it is a passion of mine, trying to, get people to sit on the seat at the table, right? So who would you like to sit? You've met many, many people, right? Who's missing? Who would you love to? That's possible. So not somebody who's died, right? Who would you love to?
Oh, I would have taken the dead because, I thought when your producer very kindly did. That's the only question, one of the few I sent in advance, in case I wasn't told to prepare set. Two people from South Africa, because obviously I showed up at a particular time in 94, so I met, one knew Mandela, Sisulu, Joe Slovo, all those were known, or I got to know them. There were 2 South Africans I really would like to have met or sit around table. They're both dead, of course. Albert Luthuli, who was the forerunner of the current leadership of the ANC, and Jan Smuts, who was one of the most extraordinary, gifted philosophers we had in politics. But of the current crop, who I'd really like to meet, because when I was in Argentina, I met, the entirety of the Argentinian political class, but there was an obscure economist who wasn't on anyone's radar called Javier Milei, and he wasn't on any of our embassy lists, but he is now the president of Argentina, and he is doing economic things that are quite extraordinary in a country which has had a terrible economic and political record.
Well, maybe
use
use your ambassadorial card. You never really know, right? Well, talking about opening up, avenues for other people. Is there a young person that you think is quite remarkable, a South African that you'd like to give a shout out to? Like, hey, keep an eye on this person.
Yeah, I actually have had a conversation very recently with one such person. His name is Ashur Sarupin. He's the Deputy Minister of Finance. He works closely with our Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. He doesn't grab headlines, but, he's got a very sophisticated understanding of finance and economics, but he also is prepared to do the hard work. There's another young woman I met at an award ceremony I was at called Sivanya Ari, who is involved in water projects across South Africa and in Africa, which are quite extraordinary, and very few people know about it. I mean, she's got a very well-funded philanthropy behind her from the Kirsch family of South Africa, but she goes out there. She finds the project, she finds the communities, and she works with them, and it's been life-changing, the work she's done. So I'm hugely impressed with her.
Well, sadly, in this case, your time is up, accepting, and I don't mean this in real life, but here's the real-life answer. How would you like to be remembered?
He tried. That's what I'd like.
Okay. Your time is up. He tried. Tony Leon, thanks for being my guest here on the Fireside Chat until we connect once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashraf.
Right, yeah. Bye-bye. There we are. Tony Leon, Fireside Chat. We'll have that up as a podcast as well. I think imminently so, and you can also watch it in terms of the visual live streaming as well as on YouTube. That's the show. We'll be back on Monday with the National Pulse. As per always, have a wonderful magic weekend, whatever it is you're going to do. Right now it's the news at 6 with Greg House.